gbhnews.org. GBH News with NPR. What matters to you?
I'm Marjorie Egan. Ahead on Boston Public Radio, we'll kick things off along the Celtics Parade route with a dispatch from GBH's own Mark Hertz on site at the TD Garden. Then we'll open the lines to talk about the Supreme Court. No, they have yet to decide about former President Trump's immunity, delaying any real possibility of a pre-election trial, sitting on other decisions that have the potential to reshape American politics and society. So, what is taking them so long? Call or text.
I'm Andrea Cabral, in for Jim Browdy. It's Live Music Friday featuring Seventh Son. You may have heard them if you caught our Music Roundtable yesterday. They're a Boston-based saxophone outfit with a debut album coming out next Friday. And later in the show, Congresswoman Catherine Clark. It's all ahead on Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, live from the BPL.
The U.S. Supreme Court is upholding a federal ban on gun possession for people under domestic violence court orders. This morning's 8-1 ruling overturned a lower court decision that struck down a 1994 law as a violation of the Second Amendment. Extreme heat is staying in place for millions of people in the eastern U.S. All of Ohio and Pennsylvania are under heat cautions. National Weather Service forecaster Bob Oravec.
The heat is still going from the Midwest eastward into the Mid-Atlantic. There has been some relief from the heat across New England, but anywhere from New York City southward to the nation's capital, it looks like it's going to be several days of some very hot temperatures and a potential for some record high temperatures over the next few days.
Pittsburgh and the nation's capital will see highs approaching 100 degrees this weekend. Wildfires are still burning in southern New Mexico, west of Roswell. Cooler weather and rain slowed the fire yesterday, but flooding delayed some firefighting operations. President Biden issued a disaster declaration, freeing up federal aid. The Washington Post says newly named lead editor Rob Winnett has withdrawn from the position. Winnett's ethical record and that of Post chief executive and publisher Will Lewis have recently been under scrutiny. NPR's David Folkenflik reports this stems from several published stories from when Lewis and Winnett worked together in British media.
Winnett's record in London is intertwined with that of Will Lewis. They worked together at the Sunday Times. They worked together at the Telegraph. Some of their scoops arrived thanks to practices that would not be accepted under the ethics codes of major American news outlets, including the Washington Post. And journalists there have been in uproar over revelations in the New York Times, in NPR, and in the Post itself over some of their past practices.
NPR's David Folkenflik reporting Winnett was supposed to start later this year. With French elections soon, Marine Le Pen's far-right party has changed its name and softened its image. NPR's Eleanor Beardsley reports.
Marine Le Pen has broken with her father, party founder Jean-Marie Le Pen's extremist stances. Many here say her so-called de-demonization process is working. The National Rally Party has drawn more women, young people, and white-collar professionals. And paradoxically, the party once known for anti-Semitism is attracting many Jewish voters. 33-year-old Jordan Naum says Le Pen firmly condemned the Hamas attack on Israel, while Jews feel threatened by the rhetoric of the pro-Palestinian far left.
By Islamic radicalism, by Islamic anti-Semitism, and we feel like only Le Pen is talking about it clearly and wants to do something against it.
He says if Macron's centrist party doesn't make it past the first round, he'll be voting for Le Pen. Eleanor Beardsley, NPR News, Paris.
This is NPR.
Good morning with the latest from the GBH newsroom. I'm Henry Santoro, and they're off with helicopters overhead and a massive security presence. The Boston Celtics Victory Parade now underway. The route is lined several deep with cheering fans who came from near and far to take part in a celebration no other NBA team has achieved, an 18th championship title. For the next 90 minutes, that duckboat parade will make its way from the Garden past the Boston Public Library, where Boston Public Radio is broadcasting live, and then come to a halt at the Heinz Convention Center. Melissa Ferguson, who is from Dorchester, says it was special to see the team get its 18th championship.
They're such a young team, they play well together, no really controversy, within the team, just injuries. So it's just a great team. I'm just so happy for them.
Manager Ferguson, Melissa's daughter, was equally excited.
It's been fun growing up all here, all our lives, just seeing the Patriots, the Bruins, the Celtics, the Red Sox. We have the best city in the world for sports, so it's always a fun time to just see us win.
She's not wrong. Celtics fans bleed green, Bruins fans bleed black and gold, and Boston is, without a doubt, a world-class sports city. Massachusetts Representative Jake Auchincloss has a new role. He's now the co-chair of the House Select Committee on China's new fentanyl policy working group. It's a 7-member group focused on combating China's role in feeding the fentanyl epidemic. 85 degrees. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from Amazon Business. From small business to big enterprise and everything in between, Amazon Business works to help simplify the supplies buying process. Learn more about smart business buying at amazonbusiness.com. This is NPR.
Welcome to Boston Public Radio. I am Marjorie Egan. Jim Browdy has a day off. I'm joined today by Andrea Cabral. Hello, Andrea.
Hello, Marjorie. Hello, everybody.
Yeah, we are here on an extremely exciting day. The Celtics Parade is going to come right by this office a little bit later today. We're broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library. We're streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. You're going to hear some live music in just a couple of minutes, and Congresswoman Catherine Clark is going to zoom in later in the show. But this place is absolutely packed. I say there's 6 to 8 people deep out there on Boylston Street 3 hours early, Andrea.
Easily. There's a gazillion people and this is just looking just outside the GBH studio at BPL. I mean, if you look up and down Boylston Street, let alone the rest of the route, I think they're right. It's going to be like a million people, if not over a million.
Yeah, people are really, really excited about the first championship for the Celtics since 2008. Okay, things are kicking off right now. They've already started moving those duck boats at the TD Garden, and that's where GBH reporter Mark Hertz is located, and he's going to tell us a little bit about the scene down there. Hello, Mark. Thanks for joining us. What's happening?
Hey, like you said, it's many people deep. It's a sea of green here. And I'm here right now with some folks who got their green on. We got 5 young gentlemen here who've known each other from high school or before. They're all from Westwood. And, one thing that impresses me, Marjorie, is how deep the Celtics go. Even these guys, 23 years old. I got a guy, Dan, here. And you, sir, have a Larry Bird jersey on, right?
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
My parents raised me well to be a long-time Celtics fan, so... Gotta rep what my parents taught me.
That's great.
Yeah. And these guys are excited. I talked to people earlier. There was the guy who drove up from New Jersey who's Dominican. He says, of course I'm a Celtics fan. He's got his Al Horford jersey on, and he drove up for 1 in the morning to be here. There's people who flew in from Arkansas, people who flew in from Richmond, Virginia. And
oh, my God.
All the local people driving down. Yeah, driving down from all over, New Hampshire and across Massachusetts. And it's just really exciting. And, I was also asking these fine young men what they were looking forward to seeing. I think, Dan, you were telling me you wanted to see the trophy as well. And then I wanted to also, I thought this, we have a gentleman here who has a jersey on, and there's a lot of this here, Marjorie. It's number 11, right? And that was Brian? Yeah, tell me why you're wearing that.
We hate Kyrie here in Boston. He betrayed us. He said he was going to bring a championship, but we got one here without him, so he just kicked off. But we love the Celtics. We don't care about Kyrie anymore.
And I got to tell you, I interviewed a vendor, and they said that Kyrie Sucks t-shirts were far outselling everything else.
Yeah, Kyrie's kind of a controversial figure here in the city of Boston. But let me ask you, Mark, what's the sense of how big the crowd is down there? We're talking like over 1 million people, I think, that are milling around. I know you're at the TD Garden, but what do you hear?
Well, I haven't heard a count yet, but yeah, I heard the same thing, that this generally brings in 1 million people. Certainly thousands in just a few blocks that I'm looking at right here. And, it's already been getting loud at the Garden. I actually walked around the corner because the signal was getting bad. I'm on Cambridge Street now. But, it is going to be deafening when those duck bars start rolling around that corner, I'm sure.
Well, Mark, thank you very much for joining us. I hope you don't get too hot down there in the crowd of the TD Garden. Appreciate your input. That was GBH's reporter Mark Hertz, and he's down there at the scene of the beginning of the parade at the TD Garden.
Well, it does. I mean, you can feel it here. First of all, there are so many people just inside where the studio is at BPL, right, let alone outside. But people really, the vibe that I'm getting is people are here to celebrate. They're here to have a good time. Tons and tons and tons of families. As Mark was saying, Celtics fan family is international. So it just is, it's a really, really good vibe.
I want to say after we're going to take a quick break here, and then we're going to come back and we're going to talk about the Supreme Court. Is that correct?
Yeah, we're going to talk about the Supreme Court, our indolent Supreme Court.
Yeah.
You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library.
Egan ahead on Boston Public Radio. We'll kick things off along the Celtics Parade route with a dispatch from GBH's own Mark Hertz on site at the TD Garden. Then we'll open the lines to talk about the Supreme Court. No, they have yet to decide about former President Trump's immunity, delaying any real possibility of a pre-election trial, sitting on other decisions that have the potential to reshape American politics and society. So, what is taking? I'm Marjorie Egan ahead on
There's a neighborhood in Tokyo where public toilets are not just handy and functional, they're fun.
And now they open if it's finished.
It is quite exciting to create new definition of public toilet.
These toilets are works of art that can talk and listen, just what everyone wants. Next time on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Direct Tire and Auto Service. The team members at Direct Tire want to thank all their clients for 49 years of business. Tires, brakes, and complete auto repair. Direct Tire and Auto Service. Not just service, customer service. And Emerson Colonial Theater, presenting Kristen Chenoweth in the world premiere musical The Queen of Versailles, with music and lyrics by Stephen Schwartz. Playing this summer, July 16th through August 25th. Tickets at emersoncolonialtheater.com.
Okay, welcome back to Boston Public Radio. A little confusion there, but I think we have our act together now. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, and we're streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Andrew Cabral is in for Jim, and we are lucky enough to be in the Celtics Parade route. They're going to be going by, I don't know, maybe 50, 60 feet from us down Boylston Street. The crowds are about 10 deep on either side of Boylston Street. It's a very exciting day here. But we're going to take the mood down a little bit right now, Andrea, because we're going to talk about what some of us have been expecting for days is a decision from the United States Supreme Court about whether or not former President Trump is immune from prosecution. Well, they didn't decide it again today. They have just one more day of decisions before they take their recess for the summer. Today was supposed to be their last day of decisions, but now they've added next Wednesday to the docket, and probably more days to come as the lollygagging on the big issues still ahead of them continues, and as I said, about whether Trump can claim immunity from federal election subversion charges, meaning basically that he could run and win an election, never having been called to task for whether or not he tried to overthrow the previous election. Pretty big deal. Anyway, we're going to open the lines to you, 877-301-8970, 877-301-8970, to talk about what all this waiting on the Supreme Court means to you, particularly when it comes to Trump immunity. Does it make you nervous? Do you get a sense that there's intention behind the way the court is dragging its feet? This is unusually long for the Supreme Court. What do you make of it? How are you feeling about the state of the judiciary on the second anniversary of the Dobbs decision, which we're going to talk about later with Congressman Catherine Clark? What do you think, Andrea?
Well, when you take it all in context, it's more than just troubling or disturbing. It's absolutely disgraceful and it's unacceptable. If you take it in the context of some of the decisions that we've seen, you take it within the context of all of the revelations about the level of gift-taking that has been going on, particularly with Clarence Thomas and Alito, from these conservative groups before whom they regularly speak and at whose on whose dime they regularly seem to vacation and travel, and in the case of Clarence Thomas, get an RV. or pay for his mother's house, and billionaire interests and conservative interests. But it's not even, I mean, it's as bad as all of that is. The delay on the presidential immunity case is actual election influencing, election interference by an act of omission, which is not absolutely not necessary, because this is by no matter what reasonable attorney you speak to. Actually, it's pretty much all the attorneys except for the attorneys that represent Trump. Everyone agrees that this is a no-brainer decision. And if you can decide with all due speed the Watergate tapes decision in a matter of days or
that's right,
and you can decide Bush v. Gore in 3 days,
in Florida,
that elects a decision that elects a president, you certainly could have made this decision since February, because February is when they got this appeal.
So our number is 877-301-8970. You can call us or text us at that number. This professor from USC calls this the least hard-working Supreme Court he's ever seen. That's a law professor.
Since 1937.
Larry Tribe, constitutional law professor, big deal emeritus over at Harvard Law School. He says the court has deliberately delayed everything. It could have released a ruling, as you just said, Andrea, much, much sooner. And these are very important rulings. We may not, at the rate we're going. It's so bizarre to think that we could have another election before the fraud of the previous election is decided. 877-301-8970. By the way, you know, Clarence Thomas, not my favorite judge, he just complaining about the leaking of the Dobbs decision earlier, the decision overturning Roe v. Wade, and he talks about what an act of infidelity it is, and it's terrible, and isn't this awful? It changes the institution fundamentally. Here's a guy, as you just said, that's taken all this money, all these trips.
Didn't declare it, had to be forced by ProPublica and other publications into disclosing that in the last decade he's taken over, from what they could find, he's taken over $2 million worth of gifts. Keep in mind, Rehnquist took nothing, right? And I'm not a fan of Rehnquist, but Rehnquist took nothing. You know, the fact that he is talking about this as a major breaker of trust on the Supreme Court, when in addition to that, most people believe that it was either his wife Ginny or Martha Alito or someone close to them that leaked the decision. I just find that absolutely so telling about his character, that he has betrayed the trust of everyone before whom that or on whom that institution relies. But his big thing is, somebody leaked the Dobbs decision.
Exactly. 877-301-8970. Let's start with Martin in Brookline. Martin, thank you for calling.
Hey guys, I know both of you. You can guess who I am.
Oh,
it's
yes,
Marty
hi
Rosenthal.
Marty. Yeah, hi Marty. Yeah, well, you're a big time lawyer, Marty. What do you think?
You must be beside yourself.
Oh, I don't know about big time. I'm an old lawyer, but my opinion is that there is a legitimate issue on how far there should be immunity on defining the limits, and I don't think it applies to this case. I think the Supreme Court has deliberately delayed it, and they're going to write an exhaustive opinion on all the limits of immunity. I'm very familiar with qualified immunity because I've been involved with police reform.
Right.
So there is some legitimate argument for some immunity, but not in this case.
Right.
And they've perverted the whole rule of law by what they're doing for Donald Trump. So
give us a prediction. Do they send it back to the lower court? Do they say there is no valid cause for immunity in this case, or do they do something else? What do they do?
Well, I think your first choice is the best way to even further delay the case.
Go back to the lower court.
Right.
Yeah.
It's completely unnecessary.
Yeah. It's completely unnecessary. Marty, thank you once again.
Good to hear from you, Marty.
Call. And
he's absolutely right. I mean, there is an issue about what constitutes an official act, right? So there are because these things haven't been defined up till this point because we've never had a president engaged in so much criminality. But on the issue of whether or not a president should be immune for putting together fake electors and for trying that a president should enjoy presidential immunity for trying to overthrow the government of which he is supposed to be president, that is a no-brainer. And they could make that ruling without having to get to, they simply say, not in this case. This case is so clear, we don't have to parse what's an official act.
And the irony is that some of the people that are involved as fake electors themselves, they've been indicted. Some of them have actually pled guilty. They've voted.
And all of them are delegates to the RNC,
They're all
to the convention.
delegates
Right.
to the convention.
Right.
Again, 877-301-8970. Cam in New Hampshire.
Hi, Cam.
Hi, Cam.
Hi, it's Tim. Good morning. Here's where I'm going. I just heard on the radio that a decision was released today pertaining to the ability of domestic abusers to retain their firearms. And I just want to know which deranged individual on the Supreme Court voted to allow domestic abusers to retain their firearms.
Well,
Clarence Thomas.
Yeah, there was only one, Thomas.
Clarence Thomas was the lone dissent. Yep, and he was the one that wrote the Bruin decision, which was the decision that in 2022 that reversed New York's law about open carry or permitless carry, not permitless carry, but he wrote that decision.
He's the NRA's biggest customer. He's taken more money from the NRA than anybody else, obviously, because he's the one that writes the perverted gun decision.
Yeah.
And I can't call him anything other than that, perverted. And you are so right. I heard you say it. It was his wife that leaked the Dobbs decision.
Well,
I have my suspicions.
We don't know. We don't know that for sure, Cam. And I don't know about
I'll tell you what. I will bet you $1,000 that it was Ginny Thomas in collusion with Sammy Alito.
Thank you for the call, Kim. I'm not sure. I'm not a fan of Justice Thomas either, but I'm not sure about his NRA contributions. I haven't heard anything about that.
Well, we can sort of safely say, based on
the
emails, that his wife was heavily involved in the insurrection and spurring it on and texting Mark Meadows.
But just one thing I want to point out to people: Clarence Thomas voted that this was okay for this person. He voted against 8-1, as Cam, the caller, just pointed out.
Oh yeah, tell them the facts.
The deal. Here's this guy. His name is Zaki Rahimi. A drug dealer from Texas, assaulted his girlfriend, threatened to shoot her if she told anyone. She gets a restraining order. But then he goes on to threaten a different woman with a gun, leading to charges of assault with a deadly weapon. And then in the space of 2 months, he opened fire in 5 public places. He got upset about a social media post from someone to whom he sold drugs, and he shot an AR-15 into the former drugged client's home. And when a fast food restaurant declined a friend's credit card, he fired several bullets into the air. The authorities found all these guns at his house. He was charged with, this is not a person that we want to have, I think, with a firearm.
No, that's true. But I will also say hard cases, there's a saying called hard cases make bad law.
True.
So he has a terrible, terrible fact pattern. But what his fact pattern, and that's not necessarily the reason to get a particular holding in a case because the defendant's behavior is so egregious. But the bottom line is that the reason for taking away firearms from domestic abusers is because the facts and the evidence show how likely they are to use them once someone seeks a restraining order or once a victim tries to get away from them. It is a particularized need. And that's what Clarence Thomas doesn't care at all about.
877-301-8970. We're talking about the case of the fact that the Supreme Court is dragging its feet clearly in making a decision about whether or not former President Trump has any immunity from prosecution. And it's, I think, extremely frustrating to people. They're always also delaying a case about abortion, allowing women who come to an emergency room in extremis in a pregnancy when they are in need of medical attention, whether they are able to get that medical attention, which is pretty frightening as well. Who's next?
Ellen from New Hampshire is
next. Thank you.
Hi, Ellen.
Yes. Thank you for taking my call. The one tier of the government that I always had faith in was the Supreme Court.
I know.
I no longer have that faith in the Supreme Court. I believe we need to get a national referendum across the country, so a national vote, that they have to retire at 75 and they cannot be placed on the court after the age 70. And they should not be allowed to take gifts. Even Phillips, Kentucky Phillips, took Beyonce tickets and a few other things. This is wrong. My father was a customs official, and he never, ever took a gift from anybody. And anybody who was on what he called his inner circle, because he would be putting big cases together for the government against people who were trying to get away without paying, their duty, their taxes, things like that. None of them could drink alcohol. because he said loose lips sink ships. And the things I'm putting together are so big for Uncle Sam that I cannot have anybody say anything out of that room that we meet in. And he never, ever took a gift because he says, you take a gift, ask for a favor. And you
Oh, we're losing you. We're losing there,
Yeah,
Ellen.
she broke
but I
up
get,
a little bit at
we
the
get the
end.
gist of your call. Thank you very much for calling. You know, there's one of the theories about why they're taking so long to get things done in this most recent Roberts Court is because they're not getting along well anymore. And I want to play you a little sound of Justice Sotomayor, who, as you pointed out this morning, Andrea, actually read her opinion on the
Her
gun
dissent.
Yes,
Yeah.
on the gun case.
From the bench.
From the bench.
That's on the bump stock case.
The bump stock case,
Right.
yeah. And people may know that's the way you can kind of turn a gun into sort of a machine gun, so it shoots over and over and over. And that was the guy who killed 58 people in Las Vegas. I think wounded hundreds. I think it might be either 600 or 700.
And that was
people.
a Clarence Thomas authored that decision as well.
Yeah.
And she took the unusual step of reading her dissent from the bench, which judges, I don't remember ever, as long as I've been a lawyer, hearing of a Supreme Court justice reading their dissent from the bench, because the dissent by definition is sort of, I respectfully disagree with the majority, here are my thoughts in writing. She read it from the bench, which is astounding.
Well, in terms of their not getting along, it seems to be fairly clear that there is some, not the collegiality there used to be on the Supreme Court. And here's what Justice Sotomayor said she feels about some of the decisions that the court that she sits on has made.
There are days that I've come to my office after an announcement of a case and closed my door and cried. There have been those days, and there are likely to be more. There are moments when I'm deeply, deeply sad.
And you know what I think is so significant about what she said is that when Ruth Bader Ginsburg was alive, and I wish she'd retired sooner, but she didn't. When she was alive, there was always these stories about her and Scalia, very, very conservative judge, polar opposite in their politics, but how they had an intellectual respect for each other. And I don't think they doubted each other's virtue or honesty or motives. I think Sotomayor is talking about something very different here.
Right, I think she's, in some ways, I think she's talking about I don't want to use the word the death, but the diminishment of a sacred institution, which is enough to make you sad. As a lawyer, this has the same effect on me as it does on her. Probably more on her because she's sitting there. But I think the other part of it is the way in which some of the justices got on the bench was not the traditional way. I mean, rushing people onto the bench in 2 weeks after Ruth Bader Ginsburg dies, the questions around Kavanaugh and how his debts got paid, the questions around sexual assault, taking all of the tips that were coming in on his behavior and having the FBI send them right to the Trump administration. They were never to be seen again. I think that there is a distrust. I think, Clarence Thomas is right. Where he's wrong is in thinking that the distrust is coming from the leaking of a decision and not from some of the real problems that some of these justices have.
877-301-8970. A lot of people are thinking that the Supreme Court is waiting until Wednesday to issue their decision, and then they can slink off to their summer vacations.
Yeah, no, I mean, that wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, this texter, this is Paul from Worcester, says Trump should patent his Republican spine removal tool. Republicans would rather live on their knees than die on their feet. Boy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Marietta in Somerville.
Hello?
Hi.
Hi. This is Marietta Haley from Somerville.
Thank you for calling.
Well, you're welcome. I've been wanting to tell you guys this for a long time, and I'm finally getting to it. Okay. In a conversation with his law clerks 2 years following his confirmation, New York Times reporter Thomas expressed his desire to serve on the court until 2034. Yeah. The liberals made my life miserable for 43 years. A former clerk remembered Thomas, who was 43 years old at the time when confirmed, saying, according to New York Times, and I'm going to make their lives miserable for 43 years.
I agree with you, Marietta, and I've thought that for many, many years now. I think that it is a revenge tour. for Clarence Thomas, for everything he's ever felt about himself, about the way the world treats him, about not having as much money until recently as he wanted to. I think it is very personal to him to get back at everybody else.
Yeah, but I mean, obviously that is not the definition of judicial temperament.
Yes.
I mean, he did have a very difficult childhood. Lots of people have difficult childhoods, and they manage to be a little bit more circumspect in their decisions when they become justices. I mean, you were a lawyer for years. I mean, the judicial temperament thing is a big deal, is it not?
Well, if you remember, it is a big deal. It's supposed to be sort of critical to a decision about whether or not to put someone on the bench. But you remember that Thomas, for years and years and years, when he sat on the bench and was in the minority, never said a word, never asked a question of a lawyer, never said anything, to the point where it was a regular running joke that he was just sort of sitting there silently. But if you heard him with the high-tech lynching stuff during the hearings around Anita Hill's accusations, which I think we can all safely say were absolutely accurate, you could tell then that he was just going to bide his time. He was that angry. He was just going to bide his time, and his time has come.
And you know something? You look at the life Anita Hill has left, going on to be a professor, a very distinguished scholar. And I was lucky enough to cover those hearings and sit in the back of that hearing room where it was all these white guys, all these senators. Joe Biden, frankly, I do blame for not letting the other women come forward and talk about, kind of corroborate Anita Hill's stories. And there have been other people have reported post the Anita Hill incident, other incidents involving Clarence Thomas and women that were pretty bizarre, weird, sexual harassment, at least in my book. So, I mean, there's no question about who was telling the truth there, and it was not Clarence Thomas, and he got on the court. Anyway, 877-301-8970. We're talking about the Supreme Court dilly-dallying, slowing down, doing nothing about probably the biggest issue that is on the court's docket right now, which is whether or not former President Trump has immunity from charges involving what I would call the insurrection, and is trying to steal the election, basically overthrow the government back in 2020. What about Merrick Garland, though? You know what? Merrick Garland has dragged his feet, too. To me, he was the wrong person to put in charge. He's got too much judicial temperament.
He does. He's the quintessential reasonable man. But he did wait too long to appoint Jack Smith as a special counsel. And I think that he wasn't alone, because I do remember, Nancy Pelosi also saying she didn't think it would be worth it to impeach Donald Trump a second time. I think people just weren't wrapping their heads around the enormity of it, and it wasn't until the January 6th Congressional hearings that people really began to get a clear sense of it, of how big the entire problem was. But yeah, there's been some foot dragging to go around. But having said that, these are three separate co-equal branches of government, and the Supreme Court's history in making these kind of consequential rulings is deeply, deeply rooted. They are separate, they are a co-equal branch of government, and they have a separate obligation to move forward with all deliberate speed, regardless of what people in the other branches of government, legislative and executive, are doing.
And meanwhile, this doesn't have to do with the Supreme Court, but this drove me crazy, too. The news that just broke yesterday that two other judges, at least one of them a Republican judge, told Eileen Cannon, the Trump appointee down in Florida, that she should step aside on the documents, taking the documents to Mar-a-Lago case that is also not going to see the light of day before the election. Two other of her more senior judicial people in Florida said, "This is not for you, Eileen. Get off this case. We need someone more experienced." And she refused.
Of course.
And here we are. And now she's questioning whether Jack Smith even should have been appointed to be a special prosecutor. I mean, I think the Democrats have been kind of foolish in a way of expecting the courts to hold this man accountable, because except in the civil cases, where he's got the $95 million for sexual assault and defamation of Eugene Carroll, and the now his 34 felonies with Judge Mershon involving the lies he told in Manhattan, he's not really been held accountable, has he?
He hasn't been held accountable, and the damage that this does to democracy is really, really It'll be a long time before we get to calculate exactly how much damage has been done.
Okay, well, that was a cheerful segment.
It was. And I feel very uplifted. And unfortunately, that's all the time we have to talk about this depressing topic. Thank you for your calls and your texts. After a quick break, we are going to Live Music Friday. We're talking with Boston's own Seventh Son, that's Sun, S-U-N, about to release his brand new self-titled debut album. It's fabulous. Stick around. You're listening to Boston Public Radio on 89.7 GBH, live from the BPL.
Whistleblowers from Boeing helped hold the company accountable at a Senate hearing this week, but some have faced a steep personal cost for coming forward.
These are people of integrity. They're not doing this to hurt the company. They just see that something's not right, and they have to speak up.
I'm Elsa Chang. We're on the power and vulnerability of aviation whistleblowers on All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And Maine Maritime Museum in Bath, presenting Up to Camp, their newest exhibit celebrating Maine's sporting and leisure traditions. MaineMaritimeMuseum.org. And Comcast Business, committed to providing connectivity for your business with network and cybersecurity solutions. Comcast Business, powering possibilities. Restrictions apply. To learn more, you can call or visit ComcastBusiness.com.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library on the parade route for the Boston Celtics Victory Parade. We are also streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Andrew Cabral is in for Jim Browdy, and it is Live Music Friday today with saxophonist Seventh Son. His debut self-titled album comes out next week with a free launch party. It's going to be Thursday, right? Thursday night at Long Live Roxbury Brewing Company. But first, we're going to hear some songs from them at the Boston Public Library. Song 1 is Peace of Yahweh. Here's Seventh Son.
That was fabulous. Absolutely fabulous. Are they going to join us?
Yes, they are going to join us.
All right.
That was Seventh Son. That's Sun for SUN for information to pre-save the album. Go to seventhsonofficial.com. They're going to join us now along with drummer Napo. Gentlemen, they're coming over here right now to the set, and you're going to introduce to us your band members when you get here.
Yeah, let's start there. Start by introducing your fabulous band members.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
Welcome, Craig. I said it right, I hope. Napo.
Yes, Napo.
Okay, just wanted to make sure.
Thank you very
I got
much.
it right. Tell us who's with you.
So on guitar, we have Chris Hanford the third, y'all. Chris Hanford the third, y'all. On piano, we have JT Holt Mueller, y'all.
Yay!
And on the bass, we have my man, my gospel brother. We play a lot of gospel music with Dennis Montgomery up in Berkeley. But this is Yoav Ganar on the bass.
He's killing it on the bass.
Killing it.
He was killing it.
And my brother right here, all the way from Cleveland. We coming all the way from Ohio. I'm from Dayton, Ohio. We're all out of Berkeley, mostly. But this is Christian Napoleon, y'all, on the drums.
Also known as Napo.
Yeah,
And
Napo. We call him Napo. That's his nickname.
Yeah.
Nickname, I don't know. Yeah.
You guys go back a ways. You've been playing. Well, first of all, you started playing the recorder at age 11. You started playing the drums at 3.
Yes.
But you came together at some point and been together ever since.
Right. We actually met like a month before we started college.
Yeah. We met in Cleveland, where I'm from, and we were actually at a Latin jazz
I met him
camp.
as a trumpet player.
Wow.
Yeah, I was playing trumpet, and we were there for about a week, and there we found out that we were going to college together.
Yeah, we were doing like a lot of Latin jazz stuff with Bobby Sanabria. He was the coordinator for the jazz camp. He was really insightful. He took us all throughout South America. We even learned how to dance, like the salsa and all. We was in there. We was in there for a minute. But it was nice though.
Well, Craig, Andrew mentioned you starting on the recorder, but you are all over the place in the music world. You also played classic clarinet and flute and
classical clarinet.
Yeah. So you got it all covered, and you're both the sons of musicians. So how did that start for you, Craig, with your dad?
I really just wanted to do something my dad did at the time.
Yeah.
And so my dad, he was into music before he went into the military. And so I was like, something, I needed an extracurricular at school, so I was like, I need to pick up something. Dad said he played tenor, he played piano, my dad played bass. Bass is my favorite instrument.
Oh, wow.
Like, actually.
Mine too.
Right?
My dad
right?
played
You know
bass. My dad
I'm a huge Marcus Miller fan.
Yeah.
And then he also sang like vocals full range. And so at school they had the recorder, and then from there I went on to like alto saxophone. I picked up tenor like in high school, and then I found like a liking into Coltrane, but I did play a lot of classical clarinet and flute, mostly clarinet though. I did like extensive camps and everything. Like that's where I met him.
Yeah, and especially you went to like a music high school kind of
Yeah, Stuyvesant School for the Arts in Dayton, Ohio.
Yeah.
It's a very prestigious arts school, like for like grades 7 through 12. It's very organized, very precise. I had the luxury of having like private instruction every week.
Wow.
And it was paid for by the school, and we're inner city kids. So, and the thing is, like, what makes that school so special is that you had kids coming from all different parts of the city into one. So you had the kids from the suburbs, from the lower income, areas, and we're all there learning and experiencing art together. A lot of us ended up in Carnegie Hall programs. Like I played Carnegie Hall when I was 16 on clarinet, and then I have a lot of other friends that took their visual art to Carnegie Hall, and it was a whole experience. Like honestly, high school was like it was a huge stepping stone into.
Yeah, and a million awards. I'd be here all day if I was reading all the awards you've won. Very impressive. Very.
I want to talk about the album because there are so many different words that came when I listened to it before I read anything about you. There's so many words came to mind. I want to talk about the album, but before I do that, Napo, your father is one of the original, well, still remaining members of Pieces of a Dream?
No, well, he Yeah, he founded. He was one of the co-founders. Yeah,
Yes.
He was the main singer, the guy up front. You know.
Their first album came out when I was the year I graduated from college. I remember Pieces of a Dream. I loved them.
Yeah, everybody.
Real good.
You know, everybody always. Every time I say my last name, they're like, Pieces of a Dream.
Right.
Yeah, so it's it's
very
been familiar
silky. They're
for a
very
minute.
silky. Yeah,
Yes, ma'am.
very.
Thank you.
So for the album, and I realize this, you composed everything. You produced the album.
I did a lot of arranging. There's
Yeah.
a couple covers on the album that
Yes.
from artists I really
I'd
love.
never heard a cover. It's the Whitney Houston song.
Saving All My Love for You.
Didn't expect what you did with it at all, because most covers of that song are fairly bland. They just people want to hear the way she sang it.
Right.
Fantastic cover of it.
Thank you so much.
But what's amazing is the number of influences. So can you, both of you, starting with you, Seventh Son, talk about your influences and how you managed to get them to meld the way you did on an album that comes out so seamlessly?
I don't. It's been like through experience. Like we play a lot of genres, and being artists through the ear, like the scientists of the ear. That's why I call musicians. Like just finding out how everything's connected. Like going from the blues to hip hop, putting the blues over hip hop. That's a little different.
Right.
And like you have gospel, you have like everything. And being at, I came up here at Berkeley, and I had started off mostly like hanging around like the jazz circles. Actually, I didn't end up playing with this brother right here until like a year after, because like I was still doing a lot of straight ahead jazz. You was kind of in like the neo soul thing, so like that circle was its
You
own
can
thing.
hear that. You can really hear it.
Yeah.
You can.
And we crossed real heavy when we studied with Ralph Peterson Jr. We were with him for about 4 years, and like he was a huge influence on I get like a lot of my playing, like like going from Art Blakey. I listen to a lot of drummers. A lot of my friends are also drummers.
Yeah.
Not to mention these guys on guitar. They're chilling. You know what I mean? But a lot of my friends are drummers, and as a saxophonist, I gravitate towards drums. I don't play drums. I try to, but there's something like really deep about the drum. It can teach anybody anything. Because before you pick up harmony, you pick up rhythm.
Right.
And if you can like manage rhythm, you'll know where to put it harmonically. Even if you're sidestepping or you don't know where you are, but if you can resolve rhythm before harmony, that's a huge language to me. Even going back to Coltrane.
It's the bottom.
Yeah.
That's why they call it the bottom. Right. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
My father played bass, so he taught me I could pick up the bass line in any song I hear.
Andrew, I think you should bring your bass with us.
Oh no, I don't play. I don't play. I could listen to a song and go, I can pick up the bass line.
I can see you on upright.
He could play any instrument by ear.
We're talking to Seventh Son and his drummer Napo. You mentioned in the piece I read about you, Napo, that you went to Cleveland School of the Arts.
Yes.
So it sounds like, from what you just said and what you're saying, that's a big deal. I don't know that we have a Boston Arts Academy, but tell us about this Cleveland School for the Arts and what difference it made for you.
Yeah, I got there in 5th grade, and I had, from off rip, I had a heavy, I wouldn't say mean, but very stern band teacher. Like if you messed up a note, you would do 10 push-ups, so that would get
he was
you
in
like,
marching band.
Oh yeah.
but it would get you right. So
he was in marching band.
So I was there. Yeah, I was there from 5th grade until I graduated from high school, and I met so many creative people there. Like the instruction, there were a few. It was a lot of great teachers, but a few that like really resonated with me and assisted in my upbringing. I started also, I think it might be mentioned, but Jazz at the Music Settlement.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was a program, a Saturday early program. Sometimes I wouldn't even want to get up in the morning. My mom could tell you guys.
Nah, early bird.
Dragged you out of bed?
Yeah, but I started doing that, and that as well, I met teachers like Bill Ransom. He's notably known in Cleveland scene. Paul Samuels, Byron Jones, a few people, and Neil Smith I later met here, and he's from Cleveland as well. So it's been a great assistance, like meeting a lot of great people.
Well, the reason I asked you
along the
both
way.
about that is it seems like every musician we have in here, whether they're a classical musician, like, Andres Nelson, who does the BSO, talked about seeing a symphony when he was 5 years old and starting to play instruments. And everybody, well, not everybody, but most everybody seems to start young, and it makes a huge difference. I mean, you're not going to start when you're 16 years old and get to this level. That's how it seems to me.
There's been players that do, though.
Yeah?
I think Michael Brecker was a late
Oh, really? Yeah.
Michael Brecker.
Okay. Okay, so there's some.
And if I'm wrong, excuse me, but I think he did start in his teenage years.
So what about the whole Berkeley connection? Because that's, again, a common theme of the people we have in here. They went to school at Berkeley.
Right.
What did that mean for you?
I met a lot of great people, just like the gentleman I'm hanging with and everybody else that I've met over the last, I've been up here 7 years. Everything happens in sevens with me, I guess. But like, it's been like a whole experience, like from getting to know Ralph Peterson Jr., Neil Smith, and like also getting to know how everybody is like handling music in the arts, but also like getting to watch people like do other things, like my friend Cisco Swank. He's about to headline Newport Jazz Festival.
Wow.
I watched him. We were at SJA studying with Wynton Marsalis. I think it was my senior year, and I think his junior year. He was a year younger than me, but he's phenomenal now. Then there's other homies of mine like Tamoki Sanders. His father is Pharoah Sanders, and getting to know him just at school. I hadn't listened to much of Pharoah's music either, but getting to know Tamoki, it's like you understand that side, because like you're meeting people who are not just artists, but trying to take it to the next generation. It
is about the generation.
Yeah.
It completely, and that the freedom to, sort of my generation, we did things in straight lines, right? Rap came, then hip hop came, and then people started going, hey, you know what? We don't have to do this the way we've been doing this. All this the R&B, which I love. That's really what it is for folks that are in your generation. So I'm a little curious. You've been mentored over the years by Wynton Marsalis. First of all, what is that like, being mentored by Wynton Marsalis? But two, how does his mentoring affect your view of the limits of what you can do with your influences?
It actually, so first, to answer the first question, studying with Wynton Marsalis was life-changing. It was amazing. It was intense. And it was like going back to what he was saying, talk about stern teachers, man. I don't, one genre that I don't play too much is traditional jazz. It came before bebop, and it's very different. The vocabulary is very different. I would not call myself a traditional jazz player, because like to those people that play traditional jazz, in New Orleans especially, it's a certain vocabulary. I'm coming more from hard bop, bebop, and beyond. And nowadays, we got brothers like Robert Glasper pushing the envelope this way, and Theo Croker and Chief Ajua or Christian Scott. But there's so many avenues that I've taken on under his mentorship, because he told me to find the artistic objective, find something that needs to be, that the people need to hear, something that needs to be said, and cultivate it into an artistic message. And so that's been, even into, my government name is not Seventh Son, to those who, obviously, but my name change artistically has it's led into that thinking of just thinking freely, also into just self-realization. I'm also a Gemini. It was my birthday this month. It was
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday.
It was on June 7th, but even my name, Seventh Son, going into where I started, in imagining myself without any influence. What if I wasn't named? What would I decide? It's just getting to know myself also. And I spend a lot of time with by myself, just creating, thinking of ideas.
That's what artists do.
I'm not introverted. I'm very extroverted.
Yeah.
I'm very silly. It's whatever. I love to have a good time, but I spend a lot of time thinking about the world, mostly from society, people, I love languages. That's why, you know, like I speak a little Spanish. I try to. Like I'm from Ohio.
Seventh Son, I got to tell you something. We're running out of time here.
I'm country. I'm from Ohio. I talk.
I want you to have time to play. And I shouldn't have called you Craig. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay,
I'm
it's
sorry.
okay.
But I want you guys to have time
the government
to
name.
play your second song, and I want everybody to know that what's going on. Long Live
I love
Roxbury
this
Brewing
one.
Company is going to be
I
Thursday.
love this song.
What are you going to play for us next?
We're going to play an original tune by Joe Henderson entitled Black Narcissist.
You're going to love this song.
Yes, you're going to love this song. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I wanted to get the song in. And we are speaking with Seventh Son, and for information and to pre-save the album, which is coming out the debate night. If you want to not watch the debate.
Right, this would be a very pleasant distraction.
There is a free launch party Thursday at Long Live Roxbury Brewing Company. The album, if you want to get the album information, go to seventhsonofficial.com. They're going to play for us now, Black Narcissus, in just a couple of seconds.
And Long Live Roxbury Brewery has been doing some great jazz nights. So for people who love jazz, and in particular for people who love Seventh Son, please go there and see them.
Okay.
Performance at Long Live Roxbury Brewing Company. For more information and to pre-save the album, go to seventhsonofficial.com, and that's Sun, capital S-U-N, like the one that's been beating down on us so unmercifully all week. After the noon news, GBH's Callie Crossley joins us. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.
Matters to you. Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Lakshmi Singh. The southern Gaza city of Rafah is under more Israeli military bombardment today. Residents describe seeing tanks advancing into the western and northern parts of the city. Reuters reports at least 38 Palestinian deaths as Israeli forces engaged in combat with Hamas militants in Rafah and elsewhere. Meanwhile, inside Israel, people have been taking to the streets every day this week, demanding a change in government. They say Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is not making the release of hostages held by Hamas in Gaza a priority. NPR's Hadil Al-Shalchi has more.
The crowd protesting near the Jerusalem home of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu Thursday night was noisy and raucous. And while thousands have demonstrated across the country like well-being, the demonstrations have been given added momentum since the resignation last week of two centrist members of Netanyahu's war cabinet. Netanyahu must now depend on his far-right partners who don't want the war to end until they're satisfied that Hamas is destroyed. Hadil Al-Shalchi, NPR News, Jerusalem.
Washington's preparing to host a NATO summit in less than 3 weeks, just as the alliance marks its 75th birthday. Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte is about to become the new leader of the military alliance. The outgoing Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg spoke to NPR about NATO's role in the face of opposing alliances surrounding Russia's invasion of Ukraine.
China is now the main supporter of the Russian war aggression against Ukraine, and China cannot have it both ways. They cannot continue to have normal trade relationships with European NATO allies and at the same time fuel the biggest and most dangerous conflict we have seen in Europe since the Second World War.
A days-long heat wave scorching much of the eastern U.S. this week is waning in New England while ramping up farther south. NPR's Amy Held reports millions of people remain under heat alerts.
New England is getting cooling relief after sweltering through near triple-digit heat this week. New York City southward into the Midwest is another story. Forecaster Bob Oravec says that's because of the high-pressure system known as a heat dome.
It's still pretty much centered across the eastern U.S., and it looks like it's going to be that way at least through the weekend and into the early part of next week.
Cities from Boston to Washington declared heat emergencies this week. Those who had to be outside tried to adapt. Azor Baker in Philadelphia is part of a cleaning crew.
We had to come out a little early ahead of the sun so that, the sun don't catch us, because that sun is beaming.
In Washington this weekend, 100-degree heat is forecast. Amy Held, NPR News.
You're listening to NPR.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. Well, it's parade day in Boston, and the Celtics and City are in the middle of entertaining 1 million or more people as they celebrate the record-setting 8-team World Championship NBA title. Among those million or so people is Ross John from Dominica. Using a reggae term, he says the Celtics are one love.
I love the Celtics. It's like, it's one love, man. The Celtics is a great team. Great people, nice people.
Ross John says he's been following the Celtics for 40 years. Last time Gang Green celebrated Titletown was in 2008. Former State Senator Dean Tran facing new federal charges as part of an indictment unsealed today. Tran and his sister have been charged with obstruction of justice for allegedly trying to cover up a sham job offer that Tran received from his sister's company. Tran already faces a rash of federal charges related to an alleged scheme to fraudulently collect pandemic unemployment assistance and failing to declare income on several years of tax returns. He's also pled not guilty to state charges of violating ethics laws and stealing a handgun. The 48-year-old Fitchburg resident was one of the few Republicans serving in the state Senate when he was first elected in 2016, but he lost re-election bid in 2020. Red Sox in Cincinnati for a weekend series with the Reds. That first game is tonight. Increasing clouds, a good chance of showers and thunder boomers this afternoon. High today, 84. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Progressive Insurance with its Name Your Price tool, a way to see coverage options based on a driver's budget. Learn more at progressive.com or 1-800-PROGRESSIVE. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
Welcome to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio. I am Marjorie Egan. Andrew Cabral is in for Jim Browdy. We're live from the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. And just as the news broke, Andrea, we got to go to the windows and see all the Celtics go by, right?
Great timing. The boats just went by right at the right time.
Right at the right time. We could all rush over there and try to take our pictures. And we have joining us live from somewhere on the parade route, I think he's on the press truck because we just saw him go by too, is GBH Esteban Bustillos. Esteban, I think you are with us. You're a Dallas native, but you went to the C's game in Dallas. I don't know who you were rooting for. What do you think? What are you seeing?
What I think it's really loud at the parade right now. I don't know if you can hear me, but it's literally, I mean, they expected over 1 million people. That's definitely true. There are people everywhere. This is one of the wildest things I've ever seen.
So where are you now? Are they almost to the Heinz?
I am actually about to pass Copley Square. I'm on the parade route. I'm on the media truck, so we're about to pass the BPL.
Fantastic.
Oh, good. We'll look and we'll see you.
I think, Esteban, it's about 20 people deep on either side of Boylston Street at this point. If confetti's in the air, everybody's screaming and yelling. I mean, how exciting.
What's the crowd like, Esteban?
The crowd is ecstatic. I mean, like I said, they expected over 1 million. That's definitely true. These people have been there. You know, I got in like around 7 a.m. to outside TD Garden, and people are already there. This crowd hasn't let up since. They are completely stoked. Entirely thrilled to see the Celtics celebrate their 18th NBA championship.
Now, Esteban, we need to know, you are a Dallas native.
Jaylen Brown just went by, I think.
Are your emotions, are you torn here? What's the deal?
Yeah, so I am a Dallas native. I am a San Antonio Spurs fan, though. So getting to go to be on the ground in Dallas, so it was great. And there was a lot of Celtics fans there. And now, I think every Celtics fan in the world is on Boylston Street right now. My goodness, it is loud.
Okay. Esteban, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. And maybe you need your earplugs pretty soon.
Thank you,
to get
Esteban.
through the rest of the day. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks, y'all.
Thank you. We've been speaking with GBH reporter Esteban Bustillos live from the Celtics Victory Parade. He's been on the press contingent riding with them. And we are now joined on Zoom from Brighton because it would be impossible to get down here from the middle of the day because there was too much traffic, by GBH's Callie Crossley. Callie's the host of Under the Radar with Callie Crossley, which you can catch Sunday nights, 89.7 at 6 o'clock, and hear her Callie commentaries on Mondays for GBH's Morning Edition. Also the host, of course, of The Culture Show.
I do the outro.
Oh, you go do the outro. Sorry.
Hello.
How are you, Miss Callie?
I'm fine.
So Callie, I have a quick question before we proceed. I understand that you were talking about Jaylen Brown's moisturizing techniques earlier in the day.
No,
he's well moisturized. She has a point.
What I was saying is all these great stories are being left untold.
Yes.
And I don't know how you can look at Jaylen Brown and not see his glowy skin. And why has no skin cream company picked up on that and gotten that man a contract? I mean, it is mesmerizing. I don't know what he's saying. I'm just looking at his skin. That's amazing.
She's the woman to do it, is she not?
No, I'm with you, Callie. I actually have to say that's the kind of stuff that when people are on TV that I'm focused on. So I just appreciate the fact that you said it out loud.
Exactly. So anyway, I'm waiting for that contract to come through because, wow, I mean, he comports himself very well before the microphone. I've appreciated that. But I got to say that skin, good grief.
It is. It's good. Okay. So, Callie, GBH's own Soraya Wintersmith did an excellent piece on 50 years after the desegregation order went into effect, issued by Judge Arthur Garrity. How do Boston schools teach the history of busing in Boston? And it's a very interesting article. Talk to us a little bit about this. Is it actually being taught?
Well, that's the issue. It's really not being taught. I mean, I think the best efforts have been by Facing History and ourselves, and they had a curriculum for 8th graders. They've added to it and expanded it. And then there's been some other efforts to teach teachers how to do it, but they seem to be few, and some of the efforts, and by the way, the Facing History, they don't have a count of who's using their curriculum because it's entirely voluntary. So in terms of having an across-the-board curriculum or even a piece of the history that you know is being taught all the time, it doesn't seem to be happening. And when you think about how much attention we are paying to, as we should, to this monumental happening in Boston, the impact of Garrity's decision and the busing decision and all of that on the BPS today, as the Globe has a huge piece about it. The fact that it's not being taught in the place where it happened is more than shocking.
You know what I found incredible about Soraya's story is she quoted someone from the school department who said a lot of teachers came up to this person and said they're from Boston. They had no clue. They didn't know about the history of busing. I find that almost impossible to believe.
I don't. What it is, those of us who've covered the civil rights movement forever, we know that people may know Rosa Parks and Reverend King, and that's it. So if you think about that on a local level, on many stories, I mean, think about the Tulsa massacre that we've talked about here. There are people in Tulsa who grew up in Tulsa, had no idea.
Yeah.
It seems impossible that it would happen here because the impact from then is so apparent now. And so why people are talking about that. So how can you not talk about the impact that's happening today without referencing the history of it, which led to today? I don't understand it either.
But isn't it symptomatic of the larger issue and struggle that we have about talking about anything, honestly, in this country that has to do with racial strife and racial struggle? Even in the most formative, teaching years of the civil rights movement, where there was an active, effort to make sure that people knew about it. Look at the backtracking that's going on now.
Yeah, well, no, you're absolutely right about that. I have to say that you're true. That's true. I guess at this time when we're commemorating or observing, analyzing, thinking about trying to rethink what happened some 50 years ago, we should be embarrassed that that's not a conversation that at least is known. The fundamentals of it are known in the community where it happened.
I wanted to mention to people that think they don't know, or even if you do know, this is really worth watching again, is the American Experience movie that GBH did called Boston Busing Battle. You can get it for free on YouTube or Passport. And I watched it a couple of times, and, I was close to Boston when this all happened, and read all about it and reported a lot about it. But this gives you a lot of information about that whole tragic period in Boston's history, which brings me to the story that the Globe did, Callie, which Mark Damiano, Milton Valencia, and Christopher Huffaker. There was a really upsetting story. Basically, it said that 2/3 of the bad schools in the city of Boston are in Black and Latino neighborhoods. Kids are still getting stuck there. Kids are having much better luck in the best charter schools and going out of Boston to go to METCO programs, and that busing essentially has accomplished almost nothing.
Right.
I mean, it was really depressing.
It wasn't consistent. There weren't as many schools and students that should have been involved. Remember, there was an opportunity at one point that Garrity, the judge in this case who ordered busing, was considering making the strategy to go out to include suburban schools, and that got derailed. This is something that our colleague Philip Martin has talked about because he's from Detroit, and that was something that was discussed in Detroit. And when that got derailed, then it was relegated to Boston itself, and that just didn't work. So, I'm not surprised. I guess people are shocked but not surprised, because I think it's horrific of what's happening, what is still happening.
Well, it definitely makes you think about how genuinely intentional the efforts were. I think there were some very well-intentioned people and some people who really thought it was going to work. But to make to the point that you just made about not extending it into the suburbs, and sort of this conflation of the benefit of integration being less about integration, yet less about education and more about proximity to white students or white people, which was not what was being sought. Yeah. It was access. I don't know. This just keeps, and it's happened mayor after mayor after mayor. It doesn't matter who the mayor is, what their political philosophy is. They've never been able to get their hands around this.
And you know what's really tough too? This Globe piece started with this kid that has a 90-minute one-way trek from his home in Hyde Park to his high school in Dearborn STEM Academy in Roxbury. I mean, that is almost insane. So you've got a 3-hour round-trip commute every single day to get to these schools. And I know from my own family members that lived in Hyde Park that went to Brighton, they spent 3 and 4 hours on the bus every day. For what? You know? And I think the budget for and plus the fact they can't get the buses to run on time, and plus the fact the bus budget, I may be off by a little bit, but I think it's about $11 million it costs them every year. I just, I don't know what the answer is, Callie. You got any brilliant suggestions for what we should be doing?
I don't have the answer to it. I want to say that what I appreciate about all of these stories is the emphasis on the young people who are at the center of it, who are having experiences, who had experiences then and now, and that's the heart of understanding this history, I think, is to hear their voices and understand what the toll was really and what the toll continues to be. And I can speak not only as a person that, has learned this. I didn't know all the history of the Boston busing for a long time myself, but also as someone who was a volunteer person in a desegregation attempt in my hometown. And it is really not a fun experience. I can just tell you that.
What do you mean? What do you mean, Callie?
Well, there was, in my hometown.
Memphis?
Yeah. There was pushback and pushback and pushback and pushback and pushback, as it has been in many other cities. And so the NAACP filed a lawsuit for one specific school as an example of, okay, this has to stop. You know what the law is. You keep pushing it back. And they asked for volunteers, and 19 of us volunteered because we didn't have any academic issues or wouldn't have any. But it was not a fun social experience.
I'm sure.
So I can just say that. So I always listen to the stories of the students who put themselves out there and the parents who had to undergo understanding that it would take a toll on their kids. They're so determined to try to get them the resources, as you said, Andrea, to make this work for their kids, the resources that they should have had access to begin with.
Well, I'm very interested in this next piece to see how you read this story. So Emerson College announced that it was going to be engaging in some layoffs amidst an enrollment decline, which they linked to the campus protests. I want to know what you thought when you read this story.
The first word was poppycock. I was like, what?
I kind of thought that might be it.
There's a real bottom line in here that we'll be hearing more from, and we keep talking about, and that is the declining numbers of eligible kids of age going to college. So that's real. That's very real. I see that and understand that as an impact. But for me to suggest that the impact came from the protest seems odd. I mean, I would just be interested, maybe there is a way to look at what happened in New York on those campuses. Did that have an impact? I'd be curious to know if there's other evidence of this, and maybe I just don't understand that. But it didn't feel to me.
Authentic.
Suspicious.
Exactly.
We're very suspicious. And people may remember the kids from Emerson were in this public alleyway, and the Boston police came in and removed them from that public alleyway, claiming there was a safety issue with access and all that kind of stuff. But the Emerson protests weren't nearly as big or as virulent as the protests elsewhere. So I'm with you. I'm a little suspicious.
Now, the college says that the impact came because the protests were going on when there were tours of the campus, and so students who might have been interested in going were turned off or didn't have access to those tours or ways to be impressed by what the offerings that Emerson had, and therefore they lost some numbers that way.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'd be interested.
I don't know. I'm a little skeptical.
I'd be interested to know. This is maybe something we could check out on other campuses where they had intense protests.
Good idea.
Yeah, well, they were pretty intense at Columbia, as I recall, and they were pretty intense at UCLA, and we haven't heard about the numbers decreasing there. So I'm with you. I'm a little suspicious. Okay, so Callie, what do you think about requiring women to sign up for the draft?
Well, what was interesting is that I just kept thinking in my mind, haven't we heard this before? I don't mean recently. So I went back, and it turns out that the U.S. came close to drafting women during World War II because there was a numbers game, and then they ended up getting a surge of volunteers, and so then they didn't go through with it. But this has such a paternal take on it that it's just disgusting. I think there's a way to have a conversation about whether women should be drafted without all these men being quoted as if they have a little pat on everybody's head saying, now, you little women, we don't want to make sure that you're protected. We're here for you, America's daughters, as one guy keeps saying.
Yeah, Josh
we
Hawley.
Actually have that sound.
Yes,
in fact,
we do.
let's take a listen to this. This is a very big fan of the insurrection, Senator Josh Hawley on Fox News this week, criticizing fellow Republicans for wanting to include women in the military draft. See if you can spot the paternalism.
The Democrats who want to turn the entire military into a giant trans experiment. They want to force women to accept men in their sports. They want to turn biological women into men. And then you got a whole group of Republicans who just want more people to fight all these wars they want to get us into. And the rest of the country, the normal people, are like, leave our daughters alone.
The normal people. So that one was pretty replete with trans bigotry, a bit of paternalistic nonsense, which is, alternately misogynistic when he needs it to be. But it's kind of interesting to hear that coming from someone who doesn't think women should have any reproductive freedom at all.
Right. Also, what gets me is that there are so many women on the front lines. There's a couple of things.
Yeah.
First of all, if you're drafted for many different roles, that doesn't necessarily mean you'd go to the front lines. But speaking of the front lines, there are a lot of women on the front lines. So what are we talking about here? I'm trying to understand what's happening. And some of them have completed that service and then been discriminated and getting the promotions or the other assets that come from having served that role. So I'm not quite clear what's going on here.
And the biggest obstacle women in the military currently face is sexual assault.
There you go.
We're talking with Callie Crossy. Callie, we just, of course, had the Celtics parade go by. I think that they're done. I think they've already gone by, so they must be almost getting to.
There are a
Heinz
gazillion people
Auditorium.
out here.
Yeah, there's still a zillion people out here, but the Heinz is just a couple of blocks down the street. That's where they're supposed to end this up. But a lot of us were very fond of Al Horford, one of the oldest players on the team. I think he's 38, Al Horford. Yeah. But I did not realize he is the first Dominican.
I didn't know that either.
To win an NBA championship. So this is a significant thing for the Dominican community. His dad was a former NBA player, I learned today too, was the first Dominican-born player drafted in the league back in 1988. So what do you make of this?
Oh, I love this story, and I really love the story of his barber wherever he goes to. And he gave the chair where everybody gets their hair cut. I mean, I just love that. All of these kinds of stories get me. The hug between Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. I'm all about the bro support. I mean, I just love this. I love the family stories.
Now, what about Tatum's moisturizing? Have you looked into that, or is it just Jaylen Brown that's got the moisturizing action going?
It's not that that he needs moisture. I'm just saying that when you want someone to represent a skin cream, you want somebody who has outstanding skin. And that's all I'm saying about Jaylen Brown. It's glowy.
Yeah.
It's really glowy. That's all.
But I think your point about, the sort of the bro love and the way they all sort of work together. We talked for years and years about the Patriot way.
Yeah. Yes.
When the Patriots were winning. But the Celtics have really shown something different and more spectacular about teamwork with this championship.
That's what I say, and that just touches me because y'all know I don't care about the game. But
I'm not a big basketball person either.
But that just touches me. These moments have just really touched me.
Yeah,
I have to say.
Yeah, well, it's. I mean, I'm not a basketball expert either, but I got to say, when I watch these games, I just cannot believe how talented these young men are. I mean, the twisting and turning and the managing to get over people that are 7 feet tall to get your basket. I mean, it's just incredible. So what's going on Sunday night on Under the Radar, Callie Crossley?
We're doing a deep dive with Catherine T. Morris and one of the featured artists at the BAMS Fest. BAMS Fest is so great. It's free. It's at Franklin Park. There are so many great artists. And the emphasis of the BAMS Fest has always been local artists. And I'm telling you, these local artists are incredible. And I just really didn't know them. And just to have had a chance to listen to some of their work. They'll be on stage with national headliners too. They're providing the water for the heat. There's vendors, there's all kinds of stuff. There's a complete across the board, dipping in and out of all genres. You know, you've got your hip hop, your jazz, your sultry ballads. Lisa Bello was the artist who was on with Catherine T. Morris, and she is fantastic.
Yeah, we're going to have them on next Friday when you're here for Live Music Friday. They're going to be here with us.
Yes, I'm looking forward to it because it's next weekend. It's 29th and 30th. Anyway, so there's that, and then we're repeating a piece that I did last year about the cricket craze building finally in the U.S. And this year's World Cup still going on, and it's be going on for another week. The U.S., first of all, beat Pakistan right out of the gate, which is unheard of because Pakistan is the number one team. And then, wonder of wonders, they've just made it into the Super 8. No one can believe it. This is incredible. So all around the town, after people now leave the Celtics parade, people will be hunkered down in front of their TVs watching this cricket match to see how far the USA can get. It's really amazing.
I think I've watched cricket maybe 2 or 3 times, and I don't have the rules down.
I don't either.
But I kind of just like the rhythm of the game.
It is the other bat and ball game, as we call it, and the craze is just growing everywhere. So this year is the first time that the U.S. has co-sponsored the World Cup with the West Indies, so there's even more interest.
All right, Callie.
Yeah, okay.
Callie Crossley, missed you today, but glad we could speak to you on Zoom. Thanks a lot.
All right, take care.
Okay.
All right.
See you later.
We've been speaking with GBH's Callie Crossley. She's host of Under the Radar with Callie Crossley, which you can catch on Sunday nights at 89.7 at 6 o'clock. You can also catch her Callie commentaries on Mondays for GBH's Morning Edition, and she's the co-host of GBH's The Culture Show, which airs daily at 2 o'clock. After a quick break, Pastor Judy Hanlon and the team behind Worcester's LGBT Asylum Task Force join us to talk about the work they're doing to help queer people fleeing prosecution or persecution all around the world. That's up next. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH live from the Boston Public Radio on Celtics Parade Day.
I'm Arun Roth. Coming up on GBH's All Things Considered, fans have been out in force for today's Celtics Championship Parade. We'll have a recap. The heat wave is giving the power grid its first big test of the summer. And this week's Joy Beat, a couple who took over a community kids race after budget cuts and turned it into a beloved institution over 47 years. Those stories and all the day's news starting at 4 on GBH's All Things Considered.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And the Peabody Essex Museum presenting Draw Me Ishmael, the book arts of Moby Dick. This diverse collection of artists' interpretations of the classic novel is now on view. For tickets and more information, you can visit pem.org. And National Grid, helping businesses work toward a sustainable future by offering guidance on heat pump solutions. Learn more about how heat pumps can help reduce greenhouse gas emissions at ngrid.com/future.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library. We're streaming on youtube.com/GBH News. And the Celtics Parade, I guess, is pretty much grinding down here. They've passed.
Yeah.
They must be down at their highest by now. There are still thousands and thousands
like
of people.
a million people are out in the street.
Out in the street, but it was a very successful parade. Anyway, Callie Crossley. I'm not Callie Crossley. I'm
You're not.
Marjorie
Neither am
Egan.
I, actually.
No, you're not Callie Crossley either. You are Andrea Cabral, and you are sitting in today for Jim Browdy. But we're joined now at the Boston Public Library by Pastor Judy Hanlon, co-founder of the LGBT Asylum Task Force in Worcester. Also with us, Al Green, the organization's director, and Pastor Simpy, who came to the United States from Zimbabwe in search of a safer home. There are a number of events queued up this month for Pride, as well as their big gala coming in September. We're going to hear all about those coming up. But for more information in advance on the group, the website is lgbtasylum.org. LGBTA for asylum.org. Pastor Judy, Pastor Simpy, and Al Green, thank you very much for coming in today.
I am so excited to see you because Pastor Judy and I actually go way back. 15 years, as she reminded me when I was. Yeah, I know. When I was sheriff, I think I first became involved with the Hadwin Park Congregational Church, which is Pastor Judy's church, and the LGBT Asylum Task Force. And the work that you do, I'm glad that you're here so I can say it to you after I've said it. I probably said it 15 years ago, but to be able to say it to you again is just absolutely amazing. And what you have in Al as an executive director is just absolutely fabulous. So let's remind people, because you've got a gala coming up, and it's a big source of fundraising for the work that you do. Let's just remind people a little bit about the founding of the Asylum Task Force and the kind of work that you do, and then we'll ask Al to talk about what it means to keep this work up every single day.
So 15 years ago, a young Jamaican came through our door at the church, and he had been sent to us by his attorney. And she couldn't do anything else. He was so upset, so depressed, and he felt that God hated him. And his pastors had told him, and they had prayed over him, that the demon of homosexuality would come out of him. And he was still having nightmares about it, even though he was in the United States. So the lawyer says, well, we're not going to get anywhere if you don't have a conversation with somebody about that. So she sent him to me because our church is welcoming to LGBT people. But I didn't know that it was illegal to be gay in nearly 80 countries. I was welcoming LGBT, but I didn't know that. I didn't know that when you seek asylum, you can't work for 2 years or longer at times. So you can't go. If Irish people came to have their Irish folk help them, he can't go to Jamaican folk because they bring their homophobia with them. He was destitute, homeless. And I said, okay, come in. And what churches do well is pass the plate. So we could help one person. And then all of his friends came because he was quite popular in Jamaica, and we did not. And I think we met you with Linford, Sean, a few other people.
You did.
And you really helped us, Andrea, because we were at our beginning. We had no idea what we were going to go do. And you heard about us, and you sat down and wrote us a $500 check.
Wow.
I was happy to do it. And, you know, I definitely want to talk to Al a little bit about the numbers that you're experiencing now, the numbers of people that you're taking in, with the properties that you own and manage, in order to give people, basically, what I was struck by, I've always been struck by, is people will ask you as an organization, what are your strategic goals? And you always say, we don't have strategic goals. People come here, they are desperate, they are in need. We want to feed them, clothe them, give them a place to stay, help them get work, and help them get asylum. And that's what we raise money for, and that's what we do. So Al, talk a little bit about how many people you're working with currently. Who are your partners in this work? Who's helping you get it done?
Awesome. So thank you again for having us on. Right now, we are supporting up to 40 asylum seekers in 7 apartment units in the city of Worcester that we either own or we lease. Since 2018, we've actually housed over 250 people, right? Many of them, like Pastor Judy mentioned, just show up at our doorsteps. It's unplanned. As much as we'd like that to be more planned and more organized, people are desperate and people are in need, and we try our very best not to say no. And so if it is that we don't have the capacity to house someone directly, we'll try to lean on our partners, whether it be other congregations, individuals in our community. We've been forming partnerships with different groups throughout the country as well, so that when we are at capacity or over capacity, which we are right now, we're able to refer folks somewhere. And if it is that our partners don't have the capacity either, we try very much not to just say no and leave people without any sense of hope. And so we'll look for resources, whether it be a homeless shelter or a welcoming congregation that works with immigrants and LGBTQ people. We try to direct folks somewhere.
Al, tell us about your own journey. You came here from Jamaica. How did this all happen for you?
So I came here for undergraduate studies at WPI, and returned home. It was very difficult going back into the closet and having to navigate life there after being here for so long. And
Worcester Polytech.
Worcester Polytech, right. And being able to be myself, not having to think twice about where it is that I'm going or who it is that I'm going out with. And returned to the U.S. to seek asylum, and was referred by Peer Project, which is a fabulous organization based here in Boston that connects immigrants and asylum seekers to pro bono legal support. They mentioned that in Worcester, where I was staying, that there was this church that was phenomenal and I could go to for help with housing, with spiritual support as well, and to find community. And so I did that. I remember walking into the church a little bit late, as I operate on CPT.
Jamaican time.
Walking in a little bit late, sitting towards the back of the church, and one of the first things that I noticed was this beautiful rainbow-colored quilt at the front of the church. And I thought to myself, that's something different, right? Here it is that in a religious space, in a Christian church, that there was this symbol being displayed. And the second thing that I noticed that was seated in front of me was this same-sex couple, holding hands, worshiping, no one thinking anything of it. I'm a big guy for the folks who are on the radio listening in, and I don't cry very often, but in that moment I teared up because it was the first time that I had felt that I was in somewhere that was safe, where I could practice my faith and be in community with others, and not folks not saying anything or thinking anything of it. Got super involved and was volunteering with the task force, and it originally was supposed to be 6 months being the director, and we're now going on to 7 years in September.
Yep. Pastor Judy, talk a little bit about the resurgence. It's always there, but there's been a surge in trans bigotry, LGBTQ, bigotry against LGBTQ people, and talk about it in the context of why you do the gala and why the gala is so important and people should support it. But this makes what you do particularly challenging. And Pastor Simply, we are definitely going to get to you because your story people need to hear. But I just want to talk about, put some contemporary context into what it is that you're facing now with the work that you do.
Well, I got started helping because I realized religious abuse was unbelievable. 90% of religious systems still think LGBT people are bad, whether they say it out loud or not. And so that's why I got started. And then as we have grown and the political situation with many Christian churches taking stands that are not like the stance we take, we have seen the rise of police stopping our particularly black young men driving cars. We had
in Worcester and in Massachusetts.
In Worcester and in Massachusetts. So pay attention, everybody. There's a lot of work to be done. We had a trans woman stoned in Worcester. Multiple times in front of one of the hospitals. And I feel when I listen to some of the stuff that's being talked about within Christian churches, I'm scared. I'm scared for what's ahead. And I can't say to everybody out there any more strongly, get involved in the politics. We cannot go backwards with this LGBT thing. We had a black gentleman who came to us from Uganda right after Floyd was killed. He said, I'm going back to Uganda. Nobody knows I'm gay when I'm walking down the street, but everybody in America knows I'm black when I'm walking down the street. And the hatred in this country, and particularly trans folks, I'm not done. I'm 73. My husband wants me to retire, and I'm not leaving the trenches. I am not, because it is really getting bad.
Yeah.
And it is focused, in my opinion, within religious groups.
We're talking with Pastor Judy Hanlon, Director Al Green, and Zimbabwean LGBT Pastor Simpi from the Asylum Task Force. So, Judy, you mentioned before that in many countries around the world, it is illegal to be gay. And in Uganda, that you just mentioned, in Iraq, there's a death penalty for people that are gay. And I know it's above 64 other countries. You said 80, maybe it's 80.
I say nearly 80 because it's actually going up.
Yeah. But Pastor Simpi, you are from Zimbabwe. Tell us your story and what the situation is like in your home country for the LGBT community.
Okay, thank you so much. My name is Pastor Simplicio. I'm from Zimbabwe, and I was pastor in Zimbabwe for 9 years. When you are in Zimbabwe, especially when you minister, if you are in LGBTIQ, you are not supposed to come out. Because if you come out, either you go to jail, either you get punishment with the community or the ruling party. So for the last 9 years, I was not living myself because I was ministering to the community. I was giving the community what they want, but what I wanted, I didn't show them. But one day I was with my boyfriend, then there's a member from our church, they caught us having sex. So that is the drama started. And I was staying in a parsonage, the church house, and that time my life was messy. Because number one, I was a leader. Number two, when you are in my country, if you talk about something LGBTIQ, if you are gay, you are witchcraft, you are satanist, you are not supposed to be in your family, you are disgraced in your family. So the moment people, they know that you are, everyone would disown you, including the government, including the community, including your family. So after I caught having sex with my partner, so everyone, in Methodist church, that time it's an Episcopal church, so it's all over in Zimbabwe, so everyone, it's in a minute, everyone knows that that's what happened. So in my community where I was staying, people, they started coming, yelling, shouting, until I called Sexual Rights Center. So Sexual Rights Center in Zimbabwe, it's an organization for LGBTIQ. So they are the ones who rescued me with my boyfriend from the place that I was to another place until I get the visa to come this side.
But you came by yourself. Your partner is still there, right?
Yes, because he's still in the process, because we applied for him through Rainbow Rail for him to come here, because my partner, he was married. In Zimbabwe, sometimes you force yourself to marry to a lady, either you don't want that. Even me, I used to have a girlfriend because I was a leader. Even the council forced you to bring your girlfriend. So you ended up doing things that you don't want to do.
Right.
So my boyfriend, he was married and with one daughter, she's 3 years, and all the particulars, passport and everything, that was in his house. And the woman held the passport, but she released the documents though. So we started a process for him, maybe to go to a safe place, either here or Canada, so long he is safe. So I decided to come this side because I wasn't not safe. because everyone, when you walk, I remember the ruling party in my country. They hold me one day and they say to me, hold a brick and stand with one leg, and tell all the people that I'm not gay. I'm a man. I'm not supposed to sleep with men. I'm supposed to sleep with women. So you are forced to do that. Because if you don't do that, either you go to jail. And if in my country, if you go to jail, it seems like you kill someone. You are not coming out early.
Right.
During former president, even Robert Mugabe, he used to say, you gays, you are more than pigs and dogs. We don't love you. If I know that you are gay, you are supposed to go to jail. For you to come out from the jail, you are supposed to impregnate someone. For you, if you know you are not going to impregnate someone who is man to man, you are not going out, which means you are a disgrace in our country. So then, I applied to come here. I got a visa. Then I applied through LGBT task force, and they welcomed me. Sometimes you are scared because you don't know where you are going, right, and you don't know if you are going to feel the same way that you were feeling at home. But when I came here, I feel like, I'm living a true simplicity. Now I can wear a hat, LGBTI hat freely, I walk freely, and I remember when I was in my country, people, when you're walking, they can stop you. Why are you walking like a lady? Why are you talking like a lady? But they don't know what inside you, what you are feeling for. So most of the people, they are suffering in Africa because we don't know where to cry to, and they are not going to understand very soon. And most of the people, the day that I came here, I have a friend of mine who was pastor also, and he killed himself.
Oh.
The same way with my boyfriend. Recently, he was talking with Elle and Pastor Judy. He's talking about killing himself.
Right.
You know what?
Very common.
Yeah, I'm
Very
losing
common.
hope. I'm losing hope every day because he's in captivity. He's hidden somewhere that no one knows where he is. Only me, I know where he is.
So between you, Pastor Judy, and you, Al, which one of you is better suited, do you think, to explain why it's different for LGBT community seeking asylum than it is even for other groups, and also to talk about that process and what it costs you to keep people's minds and bodies and spirits whole until they can get it?
2 seconds, and then I want you. Simplicio stood in the pulpit in our church, and everybody applauded. Healed. I mean, you just were beaming. The issues with LGBT asylum is you can't go to your own homeland and find refuge. You can't go anywhere, and almost all of the churches will really kick you out.
And those are the traditional places that help people.
And so we work very hard at the spiritual piece. I do, if someone wants to. And then what else do we do?
You've said most of it, pretty much.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I don't talk a lot.
What does it take to kind of, you've got I think you have 2 properties that you own and one that you manage, but they're full?
Right. And so it's $55,000 per month to do this
Did you
work.
hear that? $55,000 a month.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And so we're always looking for sources of income. I know the last time we were on the show, we actually had 12 viewers donate that very day.
Oh,
donate
good.
$1,000 in total.
Oh, great.
Hopefully we can break that record today.
BPR has a great audience.
You sure do. But it takes constant work, right? Always going out to speak, always encouraging people to join the fight, pitching in, whether it is $5, $10. There are some people who donate $1 a month because that's what they can afford. And it quite literally takes thousands of people coming together to do this work.
How do people donate if they want to?
They can go on our website, lgbtasylum.org/donate. You can also send a check made out to LGBT Asylum Task Force and send it to 6 Clover Street, Worcester, Massachusetts.
There's flyers out there that you can grab.
Excellent.
And there's also your gala.
Yes.
In September. Tell us about that.
September 28th
Yep.
At the DCU Center in Worcester. We'll have over 500 people and guests in attendance.
Wow.
It is a fabulous time. It is very different from your traditional gala where it's all boring speeches, or it's actually very, very interesting. And I'm biased, yes, but it really is a fun time, and encourage everyone to go out to that. I know that we're in Boston, and a lot of the guests are from here, but we actually have 25% of the guests each year come from this area.
Oh, wow. So 25%, you guys can come too. There is life after $4.95.
It is truly a fun time. September 28th at the DCU Center. You can get tickets on our website as well, lgbtasylum.org.
It brings in about a third of our money.
I was just going to ask, what percentage of your yearly budget can you get from it?
1/3.
Yeah, so please, 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 please donate.
Yes, donate, attend. If you can help us with getting sponsorships or ads as well, it's a phenomenal opportunity.
And also, if you support things like the Fenway Community Health Center, men's event and women's event, that's also a great time to support the LGBT Asylum Task Force. Even if what you do is say, I'm giving you guys a bunch of money for your fundraiser, I want this to go for free tickets so that the LGBTQ Asylum Task Force folks can attend the event in Boston and feel even more inclusive.
And you started that.
I wasn't going to say that, but I thought it was a good idea, and I hope people are still doing it.
Yes, we're still going on your ticket.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. I'm so glad to see you.
Yes.
Much love to all of you. We've been speaking with folks from the LGBT Asylum Task Force, co-founder Pastor Judy Hanlon, Director Al Green, and Zimbabwean LGBT Pastor Simpi. LGBT Asylum, that's LGBT, capital A, Asylum.org for information is where you should go for their September Gala, as well as the Cured documentary screening event with director Bennett Singer on the 28th. Cured is about what LGBT people are put through by those who think that sexual orientation is a choice and is a disease and can be cured. Check out that documentary. And after a quick break, we're going to talk with Boston Medical Center's Dr. Catherine Gergen-Barnett, who will join us, and you're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.
This week on Under the Radar with Callie Crossley, the Boston Arts and Music Soul Festival, or BAMS Fest, is back, celebrating and elevating the work of local artists of all mediums. How BAMFest's founder built the annual concert into an integral part of Boston's artistic community of color. That's Under the Radar with me, Callie Crossley, Sunday night at 6 here on 89.7 GBH and the GBH app.
Support for our programs comes from you.
And the Boston Foundation, believing that when we close opportunity gaps, we can build a greater Boston. TBF partners with other leaders to move equity forward. TBF, Move Equity, Move Boston, tbf.org. And Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum. Their summer exhibitions explore the power of portrait photography to document LGBTQIA+ stories, and Isabella's archives on queer experience in Boston in her era. On view now.
I'm Jamie Bologna, executive producer of Boston Public Radio, and this is 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston, online at gbhnews.org. GBH News with NPR, what matters to you.
Joined on Zoom by the way, nobody could get here today except for the folks of the LGBT up in Worcester because of the Celtics Parade. So most everybody else is on Zoom, including Dr. Catherine Gergen-Barnett. She's Vice Chair of Primary Care, Innovation, and Transformation at Boston Medical Center, an Associate Professor at Boston University's Medical School, and an Aspen Institute Health Innovator. Hello, Doctor. Thank you so much for joining us, even though it's been a wild day with the Celtics Parade. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you for being so generous and extending a Zoom link. I was very much hoping to join you in person, but I feel relieved to know I'm not the only one.
Oh my God, it was a mob scene.
Yeah, it absolutely was. It absolutely was. You're much better off doing it on Zoom, let me just tell you. So, Doctor,
I can see the crowd behind you.
Yes, and they've been dispersing for a while, and there's still like a gazillion people out here.
Amazing.
Doctor, this past week, our Surgeon General, Vivek Murthy, issued he wrote about it in the New York Times, but he basically is saying that much like the warnings we see on packs of cigarettes, there ought to be a warning about the impact of social media on the mental health of young people. And, it immediately caused a stir. But I'm very interested to see whether or not you, like certain researchers, think that somehow it was overly broad. I read what he wrote in the Times. I thought it was fairly comprehensive. And I thought he made some really good suggestions. And I thought he was following a blueprint like we did for cigarettes. What do you think about whether or not this is too broad? Do you think it strikes the right note? Or do you think more should be done?
Thank you so much for your question. Actually, Dr. Vivek Murthy and I were in medical school together. So I have
wow.
And we were friends and we go to lunch. So I have a very warm feeling for him as a person. And I've also really appreciated how much he has focused on loneliness as an epidemic and the impact it's had on health. The New York Times op-ed that came out on Monday was one piece of a greater call to action that he's had. So he came out and HHS came out, Health and Human Services came out with a more comprehensive report just last month. Not necessarily saying, which I think has been part of the stir, which you're mentioning, that social media causes anxiety and depression, but it appears that there is a correlation. So there's a 2019 study that we know that came out that said, greater than 3 hours on social media, kids have 2 times the risk of anxiety and depression. People have faulted him for using that data, saying, American Psychological Association came out saying it's not enough, it's not comprehensive, we don't have enough data. And he's not saying we have all the information we need. He's saying we know that social media causes a risk. You talk to kids, 46% of teen girls say they feel worse about their body when they use social media. 64% of kids say they've experienced some sort of hate language on social media. So we know this is, in fact, a place of bullying, cyberbullying, people not feeling good about themselves. It is absolutely not the only reason. And so I love this. As a doctor, I loved his correlation of saying, if you're in the emergency room and you're taking care of a patient and they come in and their blood pressure is plummeting and you don't know what's wrong with them, you're not going to wait for all the tests to come back to start treatment. And so I think that's the same way that he's saying, we don't have all the answers, but if we put some sort of warning sign out, which we know did actually very much work with tobacco and alcohol, at least it's giving us a tool to elevate the concern. And so I very much, as a physician and as a mother and as a community member, I actually really appreciate a call to action. I think obviously a lot more is needed to be done with media industry and with Congress in terms of what's regulated, what's put out. But it gives us an opportunity as physicians and as parents and community members to pause and to be even talking about this today.
Well, there was a gentleman, and I feel bad, I should apologize to him, who called yesterday when we were talking about this. He said, oh my God, everybody said comic books are going to ruin America and all these other things, video games are going to ruin America. And Tipper Gore was running around talking about rap music lyrics going to ruin America. And he was saying we were overreacting. But on the other hand, to me, part of this is the addictive nature. Shirley Leung, who's a frequent guest of ours, has this great podcast, Say More. She's talking about burnout. And one of the podcasts, she talks about how her son is on the phone while he's brushing his teeth. He's got one hand with the toothbrush, one hand with the phone. And I think that's I think what makes this a little bit different is the 24/7 quality of it.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think if you actually ask kids in an honest moment, many of them do not feel that they have control over their use of social media. I do think that one of the things we need to be, as the adults in the room, we need to really be thinking about the ways in which brains develop, right? So kids' brains develop sort of back to front. And any of us who have parented or know teens, we know this very well, that the frontal lobe, the part that's responsible for making decisions, thinking about when to come off social media, sort of risk mitigation, all of that is not targeted at that time. It is not online. So the social part of the brain, the sort of middle part of the brain, is what's really stimulated And so it's a perfect storm to be thinking about what social media is doing for teens' brains who are most concerned about social issues and the way that they're perceived by other human beings. It's very animalistic. It's the way we're meant to be developing. And yet social media has really targeted and is manifesting on that. I will also say, to your caller's point, there are many benefits of social media. It is an amazing place to share art, to share stories, to share music. It's an incredible place to organize, to do advocacy. And so not wanting to throw the baby out with the bathwater, just being really kind of meticulous about what's harmful and what's beneficial, and how do we actually help our kids navigate through those worlds.
And to his great credit, I mean, I really do hope that people don't do what we all do now, which is you hear about an issue and you don't actually read what the author or the source of the issue is talking about. You go to social media where somebody posts an excerpt of it and then gives it their opinion, and that's what you internalize. If you actually read what the Surgeon General has written, he points out, he makes your point about all of the partners that are necessary, the federal government, the state government, nurses, doctors, physicians, parents. It's very inclusive. So if you really want to know what he's suggesting here, please read the piece.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think read the piece if you are wanting to do deeper reading, read the HHS release. And then there's actually a terrific interview just today on the New York Times Daily if people like audio.
Yes.
About a half an hour interview piece where I also think he really, again, is pointing to the fact that this is one piece of many that he's hoping to call out and sort of sticking with it and thinking through it. And then, again, as a physician, we're already screening kids and families, and we're talking about it. But having more tools to give our families, I think, is only beneficial.
We're talking with Dr. Catherine Gergen-Barnett from Boston Medical Center. There's been a lot of talk about these obesity drugs, Wegovy, Ozempic, but this New York Times piece is talking about what else it can perhaps help with besides weight loss. Like what?
Yeah, it's fascinating to me, actually, that we're jumping from social media to weight loss medicines, right? Because it's interesting to think about the way in which our addictive part of the brain works. So these weight loss medicines, I think probably some of your listeners know a little bit about the science, but just to back up a bit. So there's something that's in the body that your body makes. It's called GLP hormone. So it's glucagon-like peptide, for those of you who are interested, that actually gets secreted by the brain or, released by the brain when you eat something. So then that's what makes you feel full, you feel satisfied. It actually slows your gut down so it can absorb some of those nutrients that come through. These medicines actually stimulate that part of the brain. So it releases that hormone and makes your body think that it's full. It slows down the way in which your gut is moving. So some people report nausea or, vomiting, but the good news is that you then feel satiated. You don't want to eat more. But there's also really interesting data to show not only that, but it is potentially, and we still are working to understand it, working on the dopamine system. So the dopamine system is the reward area of your brain that makes you crave things. So people have reported that when they're on these medications, they have reduced craving in alcohol, substances, high-calorie foods, all of those things. So it's really fascinating. And now there's some data to show that there may be a correlation with inflammation, so reducing inflammation. So again, really being careful to say what's causal and where there's an association, right? So are we saying that this medicine actually reduces inflammation, or are we saying because the body is losing weight because of the way the medicine is working, then your things like diabetes, high blood pressure, all the stress on your kidneys, that goes down, and therefore the inflammation goes down. So it's a really fascinating science for those who are kind of interested in the neurochemistry of it. But the consequences are for people who can afford the medicine, which I know we'll talk about, and for whom, are on these medications. They're seeing all kinds of health benefits, including, as you're referring to in that article, somebody was talking about their arthritis has disappeared, right? Which in arthritis we know is a highly inflammatory state. And so that is part of the connection that we're seeing.
Well, speaking of the cost of these kinds of medications, Bernie Sanders, and every time I say Bernie Sanders' name, I always see Larry David as Bernie Sanders and not actually Bernie Sanders. That's how good, that's how spot on that impersonation is. He recently took to the podium in the airwaves to chastise Novo Nordisk for ripping off the American people, specifically with regard to the costs of Ozempic and Wegovy. So talk a little bit about why he's making that allegation, but also where this leads as we begin to see that there are these benefits in these drugs that may be prescribed on label for some of these other illnesses. What does that mean for cost?
Yeah. So, Bernie Sanders, as you said, kind of went on the airwaves, and actually the CEO of Novo Nordisk is agreeing to meet with him in the fall to talk about the cost issues. So it is really striking. So Wegovy in our country costs up to $1,300 a month.
Wow.
And versus in Denmark, it's $186 a month. Germany, $137, and the UK, $92. So that's extraordinary. So we know that the Novo Nordisk does not need to be making quite so much money. It's part of the way that our system is set up, though, where when you have a patent in the U.S. On a pharmaceutical, you have the right to sell it without any kind of competition. So Novo Nordisk has the patent on the semaglutide, which is the key ingredient in a lot of these medications, until at least 2031. So that's pretty extraordinary to think about, the kind of stranglehold that could happen on a medication. The question that I think will come with this conversation and Bernie, Sanders bringing this to bear is, can we think about having some sort of reduction on these costs, given the fact that there will be potentially such huge benefits for the American people. But I will also beg for us to think about I've been writing, I have an op-ed that I hope will come out soon, really thinking about the cost of food, the fact that we have these cliff effects for family where you start to make enough money and you lose all your food benefits, right? And so folks who can't afford this medicine aren't able to afford food either. So they're stuck in this middle place of becoming more and more obese because they're eating these high calorie foods without access to the medicine. So again, it's saying, what are we doing in terms of the legislation to also improve all the other ways that we're going to treat obesity?
We're a nation of suckers, really. Listen to that. We put up with the fact that the government won't negotiate these prices, $1,300. I mean, it's just
it's extraordinary.
We roll all these other countries are able to get these medicines, and we're fools.
And we wonder why we're in such extraordinary debt.
Yeah.
But that is in large part because there are too many people in Congress who represent the interests of the pharmaceutical.
Yes.
I mean, Biden has done where he can. He's negotiated it for Medicare and stuff like that, negotiated down the price of insulin. But it is greed, but the same thing for food. People who can no longer afford food is because there's been a conspiracy by the people who produce our food to consistently raise prices. They've got record profits. You can't blame that on inflation. That's just, so people having to make those choices in the richest country in the world is very troubling.
So,
and can I just add one more thing?
Sure.
We've talked about it in prior episodes. Thinking about, again, climate change and things like avian flu and the ways in which that will impact our food system. And so, again, sort of thinking about the public health impact of, climate change and ways that viruses are spread, and recognizing not to be like Chicken Little and the sky is falling, but to really think about this integration of all these issues. So we got to take, companies like Novo Nordisk to task, but we also need to be thinking about the other players.
We're talking with Dr. Catherine Gergen Barnett. So we've talked a lot with you about the stress and overwork of people in the medical field, that we don't have enough primary care doctors. You just wrote a piece for Stat News about something I never even heard of, quality metrics, which seem to be overwhelming physicians, particularly in primary care. So what are quality metrics and what is the problem?
Thank you. Thank you for reading it. Thank you for calling it out. Myself and one of the presidents of my hospital co-authored this, in part because I do think it is a piece of primary care burnout that people aren't talking about enough. So quality metrics are something that came out, and I sort of wrote the history of, actually, interestingly, a lot of this originated with Florence Nightingale, of all people, really thinking about how do we actually do medicine better, right? Which is amazing and absolutely something we need to be building upon. What has happened now is become a free-for-all. So every payer has their own set of quality metrics that doctors or providers are responsible for. So some of them are really kind of straight down the middle, thinking about blood pressure control, sugar control, getting your eyes examined. But then there are some that are pretty left field, and certain payers who will only have one or two metrics that are different than other payers. So as a provider, when I see a patient, I may be responsible for up to 60 quality metrics to be fulfilling for a patient in order for the hospital to be paid. It's nuts. And if you actually add up all the hours it would take for a provider to do this, it would be over 14 hours a day.
Oh, God.
Just to fulfill quality metrics. So actually, CMS came out with a paper last year saying, let's at least get people to, or the payers to sort of 23 agreed upon metrics. I'm very grateful. Myself and others have been working with Senator Friedman in Massachusetts, who actually is working very hard on this now to say, let's, in Massachusetts, get the payers to align on quality metrics so we have fewer of them and they make more sense, and we're not driving primary care even more nuts than they have to be. So that patients can get good care, but we don't have to be chasing every quality metric that comes to us.
This is probably a really simple, quick answer, but is any of this with the payers being driven by malpractice suits and the cost of malpractice suits as to why they're driving doctors to certain metrics and not others? Or is it this is just the way they think where we should be more efficient?
I think that's a great question. I wouldn't rule out malpractice as a shadow piece there. I wouldn't say it's a direct driver, but I would say, again, it's the Wild West, right? In terms of saying, what do we think is good for patients, and what are we going to make hospital systems and providers do to take care of patients? Even though, honestly, when I have a patient coming in who has an acute issue, the last thing they're thinking about is the 60 quality metric that I need to fulfill, right? They could be like sick with pneumonia, and I'm asking them when the last time they got their teeth cleaned. So, it's not a bad question. It's just not something that's relevant in that moment.
Yeah, well, it was a great piece, and thank you for bringing it to our attention, because I'd never heard of this. Doctor, thank you, as always, for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Doctor.
Enjoyed that. Take good care.
You too.
We've been speaking with Dr. Catherine Gergen Barnett, Vice Chair of Primary Care Innovation and Transformation at Boston Medical Center, Associate Professor at Boston University Medical School, and an Aspen Institute Health Innovator Fellow. After a quick break, Congresswoman Catherine Clark joins us. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And National Grid, helping businesses work toward a sustainable future by offering guidance on heat pump solutions. Learn more about how heat pumps can help reduce greenhouse gas emissions at ngrid.com/future. And MIT Federal Credit Union, helping individuals achieve their financial goals with a range of savings account options, including high-yield money market accounts. Learn more about their services at mitfcu.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We are joined now on Zoom by Congresswoman Katherine Clark, Democratic whip. That means she is the second highest ranking Democrat in the House. Powerful woman there, very powerful Congresswoman. I love to say that. She's a representative of Massachusetts' 5th Congressional District, and we're very thrilled that you could take the time to be with us, Congresswoman. Thank you very much.
Oh, I'm delighted to be with you on this beautiful day in Boston with our NBA champions. It's exciting.
It has been an absolute madhouse down here, but a very good one. It's very nice to see you again, Congresswoman Clark. We want to get your take right off the bat about the Supreme Court's failure to issue a decision on presidential immunity this morning, and if you have any thoughts on the decision, one of the decisions they did issue, which was on the gun restrictions, taking away the guns of domestic violence abusers, with Clarence Thomas, of course, author of the Bruin decision, being the lone dissent. What do you think first about the failure to issue the decision on immunity?
Well, we are waiting that decision because we know how much rides on it. And it does feel like they are playing out the clock, hoping to put this prosecution past the election, but we will just have to see what they do. And I did breathe a sigh of relief with the decision that did come down today. It is a message to survivors of domestic violence that they matter. And haven't worked my way through all the concurring opinions, but it was a good day.
Do you think it's a problem that Justice Alito, who, by the way, wasn't in court today or yesterday when these decisions came down, maybe because he's embarrassed about blaming his wife for the flag waving, the upside-down flag waving at his home, and the flag, of course, an upside-down American flag, which was widely waved during the insurrection at the Capitol, and then there was a second flag at their summer house. You really took him to task. What'd you say?
Again, I mean, this is outrageous that we have a Supreme Court justice who is flying symbols of the insurrection at his home. I mean, we need ethics reform. We need rules and accountability. Clearly, this court, Donald Trump's Supreme Court, is not up for policing themselves. And he should have nothing to do with any decision that involves January 6th or Donald Trump. But so far, he has refused, and the Chief Justice is not insisting that he recuse himself. So, but it is outrageous, and just one of the many norms and attacks on our institutions that come regularly from a GOP that has chosen extremism.
Congressman, what is your view of what to do about the court? It is widely lost faith of considerable numbers of Americans. If the former president were to win, again, it's very possible that Alito could retire, or Thomas could retire, or they could appoint younger people of this same very, very conservative viewpoint. Should we expand the court? What should we be doing about the court?
I think we need to evaluate many ways of looking at the court, but I think first thing is that we put in ethics reform and ethics rules that have teeth. And whether that is applying to Justice Thomas and his many gifts, or whether it is with Justice Alito. And again, these symbols of extremism in these flags that he is boldly flying in front of his house. Even if he tries to blame his wife, he was clearly aware that they were there and flying. So that's where we need to start. And I think we can look at things like term limits. This is Donald Trump's court. that Donald Trump was the architect of Dobbs, and he put this court in there to get the result of overturning Roe v. Wade. And so we have to do everything we can to make sure that we have Democrats in the House, that we retain the majority in the Senate, and that we reelect Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, because the Supreme Court is so outrageous at this moment and such a danger to the rule of law and to this country's future, that we have to make sure, one, we win elections, and two, that we're ready to legislate and bring ethics to this court.
Well, it's the second anniversary of Dobbs, and it has been just an almost indescribable 2 years in terms of the fallout and what women have been experiencing in these states that have, all but done everything they could to ban abortion. What are you seeing and hearing out there in terms of the reaction to some of the stories that we're hearing from women who've been forced essentially to carry dead fetuses because no one at the hospital was willing to do any sort of removal for fear that they would be prosecuted? The stories run the gamut from very extreme stories like that to simple denial of access. And so when you're out and you're listening to your constituents, so you're in D.C., what is the reaction to that?
The American people are way ahead of the Republican Party on this issue because they understand that this is fundamentally about their freedom. And as I travel the country, and it's not just blue states, it's Florida, Texas, Alabama, Kansas. I've been in Ohio and Michigan. I'm heading to North Carolina on Monday. People in those states, even if they have nuanced views on abortion, they understand they want to make that choice. They want to make that choice with their family, with their circumstances, with their doctor, in accordance with their faith. They do not want Donald Trump perched on the edge of their bed, in their bedrooms, in their exam rooms with them. They want to retain that freedom of making this decision that is so fundamental of if, when, and now how to have children. And the stories that I hear from states like Texas are horrifying. Amanda Zarowski was my State of the Union guest, 18 weeks pregnant when her water broke, and there was no way that this pregnancy was going to go to term. She was denied care and told to go home until infection set in. And I hear these stories routinely. She did. She ended up in the ICU. She almost lost her life. It is very unclear if she'll ever be able to have a child herself. And this is a story repeated on a daily basis with the millions of women who are affected by abortion bans. Again, this is done.
Oh, I think she cut out.
Whoops. We have lost the Congresswoman.
We may have lost the connection.
We're going to try to get her back in a second.
That's one of the things I am baffled by, because I don't even, for a doctor, I don't know. Oh, she's back. She was back. We missed. We
lost you for a second, Congresswoman.
Yeah, the last probably 10 seconds.
Oh, no.
Yes, that's okay.
I don't know if you heard my story about Amanda.
Yes, we did. That she was in the ICU.
You were saying this is the Trump court. You had finished the story about Amanda, and you were saying this is the Trump court, and this is what's being visited on women across the country.
Yeah, and I think Katie Cox, who was so brave about her story with her pregnancy and being denied care coming out of Texas, I thought she summed it up well today. She announced she is pregnant again. And she said in Texas, she's learned you have to call your lawyer before your doctor. Nobody wants this. It's why Americans are choosing freedom over extremism. And it's why Democrats are continuing to outperform Republicans in races around the country. This is going to continue to be a absolutely critical issue in this election because they are writing down that they are going for a national abortion ban. And no place is going to be safe in this country, not here in Massachusetts or any other state.
Congressman, I know you've been very concerned about Clarence Thomas in one of his decisions referred to the fact that, that Dobbs, that Roe v. Wade first, and then we're talking about contraception, then we're talking about gay rights. I know you're concerned about contraception being at risk in the United States. What are you doing?
Yeah, so we are right now trying to bring a vote on contraception. Very simple bill, just defending the right for Americans to access contraception. We have 0 Republicans who have signed on to bring that to a vote. Look at what's happening with IVF. We have a lot of talk from the GOP about they support IVF, but when it comes before them in the Senate, they voted it down 3 times. And if you look at what the House GOP has done in the 117th Congress, they overwhelmingly voted against the right to access abortion, against the right to travel across state lines, against the right to use birth control, against the right for marriage equality. This is extremism. And this is why the American people do not see themselves in this agenda. We understand that people out there are really challenged. Price of groceries are high. The price of housing is skyrocketing. And we are continuing to do what we have been working on with Joe Biden to bring costs down. But what they're getting from the majority in the House is extremism and nothing to help tackle those costs, the high prices that we are seeing coming out of corporate greed. Families shouldn't be funding corporate profits, but that's what we're seeing, and this House GOP is doing nothing to address it.
So, Representative Clark, we read recently that Benjamin Netanyahu dissolved his cabinet, essentially, not wanting to kind of deal with some voices of dissension. He's been invited to address Congress. Are you going to attend?
I have attended every single head of state that has addressed Congress as a member of leadership. But let me say this, we have to continue to do everything we can to end this war, to push for a bilateral ceasefire, the return of the hostages, and the desperately needed humanitarian aid. This is the president's focus, and this is my focus. And the prime minister doesn't seem to share that vision. And without a clear path, and this is what I think the pushback we're seeing now from within the IDF, from within the Israel's own military against Netanyahu, is what is the vision for the day after? How do we get to peace and security for Israel and Israelis, as well as for Palestinians? That has to be the focus, and we have to get to a bilateral ceasefire.
We're talking to Catherine Clark. She is the whip in the House. That means she's the second most powerful person on the Democratic side in the House. Congresswoman, I'm getting deluged. I've got hundreds of them. So many it may be an organized effort, but from people who claim to be your constituents and are very upset that you are taking funding from AIPAC, which of course is a very powerful lobby, represents Israel's interests. They want you to stop taking money from AIPAC. What is your response?
Marjorie?
Yes. Can you hear me? Congresswoman, are you there?
Did we lose her again?
I don't know if we've lost her again. I don't know where she seems to be going.
Or if she's talking and we just can't hear her. That's what happened the last time.
I don't know. I think she's frozen again.
Frozen.
We'll wait a couple of seconds. Oh, there she is.
Okay.
She's back. We lost you. Right after I asked you the question about AIPAC, we lost you, Congresswoman.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
I heard your question about AIPAC funding.
Yes.
So let me say this. I'm going to repeat what I just said. This war needs to end, and we are clear on that. What happened on October 7th is atrocious, and what we are seeing in the tens of thousands of deaths and even double that in injuries to innocent civilians, to the Palestinians, it has to stop. We have to get to a ceasefire. We have to return the hostages. And we have to make sure that we are surging the humanitarian aid that is needed to prevent a famine, to get the medical assistance that the Palestinians need. Israel is our long-term ally, and we are rock solid in that. But that does not mean that that is without criticism. You have heard it from Chuck Schumer. You have heard it from President Biden. Netanyahu has a role here in making sure that we have a plan for long-term peace and security in the region. And that is what we are going to expect and continue to work for.
So I think that means you're going to continue to take contributions from AIPAC.
That's correct.
Okay. Let me ask you about conditions on weaponry. As you know, many of your constituents think that we should not be giving any more money to Israel without conditions on what they're going to do and what the IDF is going to do in terms of assuring what you just talked about, more humanitarian aid, et cetera. Where are you on conditions on aid, on military aid, I should say?
Well, I think that we have seen the president say that he was not going to deliver heavy bombs while things in Rafah were so dangerous, that this is a heavily populated area without people able to escape. And so, I stand with the president and that decision. But we also saw the attacks from Iran. We know how dangerous this region is, and that the stability of Israel is critical to the stability of the region. So we are going to continue to stand with our ally while we continue to say this is a just war, but it also must be waged justly.
Just one last thing on this, Congressman. You know that after Biden said he was going to hold off on the small bombs, then he approved a lot more money going to military aid without conditions. So I guess that's the bigger question is should we condition this military aid or just, do it sometimes like Biden has done, not other times?
Well, I think that we have to condition aid as things are developing in that country. Most of the aid that we have recently approved in the last few months that came with the package from Ukraine are weapons and systems that won't be delivered to Israel for years to come. But it is important that they have those protections, that we continue to maintain the military strength of our ally as they face threats, not just from Hamas, but also from Iran and Hezbollah. And so we stand by that, but this is also just the most horrific loss of life of the Palestinian people. And we have to do everything we can to end this war and make sure that they are getting the food and the medical attention they deserve and need.
Congressman, thank you very
Thank you very much
for your time. We much appreciate it.
I think, the issue is whether or not Netanyahu is going to listen, and then if he doesn't, what we do. We've been speaking with Democratic Whip Congresswoman Catherine Clark. She represents Massachusetts' 5th Congressional District. After a quick break, we're opening phone and text lines and celebrating a long-awaited victory. Boston is once again making way for its duck boats. We'll open the phone and text lines to ask you, what is it that this city can't get enough of with these absurd and beautiful World War II military machines? The Boston Duck Boats and You, that's next. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, live from the BPL.
I'm Arun Roth. Coming up on GBH's All Things Considered, fans have been out in force for today's Celtics Championship Parade. We'll have a recap. The heat wave is giving the power grid its first big test of the summer. And this week's Joy Beat, a couple who took over a community kids race after budget cuts and turned it into a beloved institution over 47 years. Those stories and all the day's news starting at 4 on GBH's All Things Considered.
Funding for our programs comes from you.
And Maine Maritime Museum in Bath, offering daily lighthouse cruises, a working blacksmith shop, docent tours, and 20 acres to explore, including a Victorian shipbuilder's home. MaineMaritimeMuseum.org. And the Boston Foundation, believing that when we close opportunity gaps, we can build a greater Boston. TBF partners with other leaders to move equity forward. TBF, Move Equity, Move Boston. TBF.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Andrea Cabral in for Jim Browdy. We are live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. If you're just tuning in, we have been right on Boylston Street at the site of the Celtics Victory Parade. They all went right past us, Andrea. You could see them out the window, the confetti and the screaming and the yelling. It was very exciting. We spoke with our GBH reporters Mark Hurst and Esteban Bustillos, and they were, at the parade at TD Garden or on the press boat. I don't think they were on a boat. They were on the press cart or whatever they were on, riding in front of the duck boats. Anybody who has a pulse knows it would not be a sports victory parade in Boston without the appearance, of course, of the aforementioned amphibious but lovable monstrosities we affectionately call duck boats. So we're inspired by the parade, as well as a piece of history in the Globe this morning by Danielle Kuhl and Maddie Caw on the history of duck boats, to ask you, what is the charm, what is the appeal of the duck boat to you? The number is 877-301-8970. You can call or text at that number. Their presence in Boston was a tradition heralded by the late, great Mayor Tom Menino as part of the city parade following the Patriots' Super Bowl win way back in 2002. And, of course, the rest is history. 877-301-8970. How do you feel about duck boats? Maybe you don't like the duck boats. I was kind of surprised when I went in the duck boats. They were expensive. And then we got plumbed into the water there in the Charles, and the water came flying up the sides. So my kids absolutely loved it. And I loved it, really. I loved it too. But do your eyes roll up when you see these tourist traps careening around? Well, I shouldn't say careening around. They drive responsibly around on wheels in Boston. Or if you just want to weigh in on the Celtics win, we could do that too, just to get you in the mood before we get Andrea's take on the duck boats. Here's a clip of the final seconds of the NBA Finals game on ABC when the Celtics won. Here it is.
It's over. Time to say it again, Boston. Anything's possible. Banner number 18 has been secured. The Celtics are NBA champions.
And then we have a little sound of Celtics coach Joe Mazzulla. He was on 98.5 The Sports Hub talking about how the Celtics coaching staff took the team on a duck boat tour before the start of the season. Here's Coach Joe.
The staff, we did a duck boat tour. We kind of spoke it into existence, and I was like, we're going to start the season with a duck boat tour. So the staff took one. Most comfy retreats, guys go away, go to the beach, go to Cape Cod, go to different places. We did our coaching retreat in downtown Boston, and because we had new staff members, and we were creating this identity and building a connection to the city. And I was like, we're doing our staff retreat in Boston. We're going to dinner in Boston. We're going to a Boston hotel, and we're going to do the duck boat tour so we can understand the city and the history.
We talk a lot about, Joe Mazzulla in terms of, he's only 35 years old. He took this team over under, very difficult circumstances, given the way the last coach left the team. And I am continually struck by his poise, his equanimity at 35, and not just in regular season play, in a season where they were the best team in the country and they won the finals. He just, the idea that he thought to himself, look, I'm new to the team in terms of being the head coach. We need to connect to the city.
That's right.
And so he takes them on a duck boat tour. This is a coach who thinks deeply and carefully about the goals he has in mind and how he's going to get to them. And I have a great deal of admiration for him.
Well, I think the more important question, Andrea, is you've lived in Boston for quite some time. Did you feel connected to Boston until you two went on the duck boat ride and got the real?
I have to say, I have actually never been on a duck boat ride.
Oh,
I've never done it.
Do you view those
I've
as-
waved at them from traffic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what do you think of the duck boats? I mean, how do you feel? Have you bonded with them? Do you have negative feelings? Do you like them? What's the deal?
I really do think that they have become an integral part of Boston's cultural landscape.
They really have.
And yet, we're a city that people travel to. We're a destination city, so they are tourist traps. I mean, I'm sure that there are lots of people who come in from other places and they get on the duck boats. But there is something about them going into the Charles River, dirty water and all, which is not so dirty anymore, that I think people find endearing. The fact that the tour, so much of Boston's tourism is about history, and the tour itself combines history and comedy. It's very entertaining. The names of the boats are entertaining. So I think that they've achieved a proper status, in Boston's lore and in the tourism industry.
We're getting a text. The duck has been a much underappreciated animal. Wonderful to see them finally getting their due. The number is 877-301-8970. I did not know. And by the way, Cindy Brown, a woman, started the duck boats quite a while ago, back in the 90s, and she's created a great business. But when the duck tours began in 1994, they used some of the original duck boats
I didn't know that
World until
today.
War II that carried the soldiers.
Right. So when
onto
you
the
see them
beaches
going
of
onto the
Normandy.
Omaha Beach in Normandy,
That's right.
These were the actual original boats, which also accounts for a certain nostalgia around seeing them.
So Sandra, in the car, how do you feel? Are you emotionally attached to the duck boats or not?
I have a quick story because we are leaving the parade now on our way back to our campsite at Miles Sanders State Forest. We left our campsite to go to the parade. And, you're talking about feelings and nostalgia.
Yes.
And Boston Celtics, and it all ties in. And I'm in the car with my boyfriend of 4 years and my partner in crime, Bryce. And he just informed me, as you were talking on the radio, that I didn't realize the only Boston sports teams, the best teams, have duck boats in their celebratory parades. And this is my first Boston sports parade. Championship Parade, but Bryce has been to all of them and just loves them. Patriots, the Red Sox. He tells me about how the different bands, have different types of parades, and today has just been so excellent. So to come back and hear you on the radio talking about all these things, and for me, watching Joe Mazzulla almost in a duck boat today was my moment.
Yeah.
I've been going to Celtics games, not frequently for a few years, and I just felt so great, so happy today. So just thank you so much. I called and I'm on your show. That's awesome.
You did. Well, thank you for calling. I love your enthusiasm, Sandra. It's infectious. Have a great time with your boyfriend. Our number again is 877-301-8970. We're talking about the Celtics. You can certainly weigh in on the parade if you want, about their great season, but we're also zooming in on the duck boats, for which I think a lot of us have a great deal of affection, at least
Unless
I do.
you're directly behind them in traffic and you're in a hurry. That's probably the one time where you're just going a little bit too slow.
So listen to this. I did not know this. Again, Cindy Brown started the company. I love to see a very successful company started by women. They have names, kind of Boston-centric names. Commonwealth Curly, Longfellow Bridget.
You took a duck boat ride and you didn't know they had names?
I did not know they had names.
So you just kind of wandered onto the boat?
And you know what else? This story in the Globe, Daniel Kuhl and Maddie Hawes, we talked about before, they said just not any duck boat driver is allowed to be at the helm in the actual parade. They have to have worked in previous parades or given up, excuse me, I'm getting it wrong. Some drivers who had worked in previous parades gave up their spots this year to offer newcomers a chance to join the glory.
Well, it's an experience.
But no first-year employees are allowed. So we're getting veteran drivers for the experience of driving these superstars around.
Joel in Connecticut said, The duck boat gives you the opportunity to take a ride in Boston, which intentionally ends up in the river. So there's that.
That's right. It does, and it's kind of a fun high point. We have a 13-year duck driver here who's texted, but you got to call. We'd love to talk to you, Erin. 877-301-8970 is the number.
No, we have a ton of people who end up in the river unintentionally. So at least you can make a choice and end up in the river because you want to be.
Noel Ann from Westboro, thank you for calling.
Hello.
Hi.
I've just always known the duck boats be in Boston. I've never been on one, but I've just always seen them around.
That's right. You see them all around the Back Bay.
Right.
They're driving up to Beacon Hill to see the state legislature. They're driving around the brownstones here. They go into the Charles River. Yeah, I think they take off. They used to take off from the Prudential Center. I don't know if they still do, but when I wrote on them, that's where they took off of. Yeah.
Because it's also an historic tour of Boston, so they've got to go by the State House, and they tell you about the history of the Massachusetts legislature, and they go to all of the spots where history was made. And in Massachusetts, that's a lot of spots.
Yeah. So, Nolan, do you want to ride one now?
I don't know.
No? Okay. Well, it's really fun. It's a great fun thing to do, to get to drive around the city, get somewhere to... And they have these guys that give you instructions. Nolan, thank you for the call. They're, part comedian, part tour guide, and they're hired specifically to entertain everybody on the rides.
And people quack when they go by. Like if you're in a car or you're on the street and the duck boats go by, people quack, and sometimes to the confusion of the people who are in the boat who don't know why you're quacking at them.
Yeah, they have, they give you the history, they give you the comedy. Apparently there are duck boats in other cities as well. They've kind of followed us. There's Wisconsin that has them, Chattanooga, Tennessee has them, San Diego has them, but I think they're distinctly, meant to kind of make us think of Boston.
Well, a couple of those places too had serious accidents, and it was because of bad maintenance on the boat. And they closed. I think the San Diego one closed, and there was one other one I think that closed. And the other thing that makes the duck boats unique in Massachusetts is their responsiveness to maintenance, regulation, and safety.
Right.
So after we did have a fatal with a biker, incident, and Charlie Baker filed legislation to ensure that there was proper maintenance, and it really did become a partnership. I mean, they're regulated because they're a vehicle, and they're regulated because they're a boat. There's a lot of regulations for them to adhere to, but it seems as though they were embraced, and they've really focused on making it a safe ride for everybody.
Andrea, we have an actual duck driver, Erin.
Excellent.
On the line. We're so excited to talk to you. Hello,
Hi,
Erin.
Hey there.
So tell us, have you gotten to be the driver on some of these famous rides with the Celtics or the Patriots or the Red Sox?
Yes. Don't forget the Bruins, though.
The Bruins. That's right, the Bruins. I'm sorry.
So I'm so happy to talk to you guys. Listen to you every day.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I was a driver from 2004 to 2016.
Wow.
We had a lot of parades back then.
Yeah.
So this is nice to be back on there. So I was the lead duck in the Bruins parade in 2011.
Oh, that's great.
Hold on. Wait a minute. The lead duck? How did that happen for you? How did that happen for you, Erin? How'd you get to be lead duck?
I don't know the exact details, but because I'm a huge Bruins fan.
Okay.
Oh, that probably helped.
Okay.
Somebody, I think, maybe pulled some strings for me.
Oh, okay. So do you get to interact at all with the players before the Ducks actually, start their march?
Yeah, you do. Obviously you want to greet everybody coming on board, but it's a very difficult parade to drive in because you have to go so slowly and really just keep your eyes out for, millions of people on the street.
Yeah. So
but yeah, it was great. Sorry, Marjorie, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I had Zdeno Chara and Tim Thomas.
Oh, goodness.
In the Stanley Cup parade, as well as the owners. So one of the owners, Charlie, he sat right up front and was asking all sorts of questions, so that was really fun. I did a couple of Red Sox parades, 2004, as well as the one following, I think it's 2007. So everybody was great, and we get to, meet a lot of the players. Never did any Patriots parades because I was always traveling in the winter.
Oh, okay. So why'd you move on? Why'd you move on to something else?
Wow. it was a great time in my life, but, eventually you got to try new things. And but still so happy to see the Ducks whenever they go by. Still know a lot of the drivers. We have an alumni Facebook group that we always say hello on. It's a great company.
It's a unique experience.
Steve Brown's a fantastic CEO, but it was founded by Andy Wilson. And Andy Wilson was a really fantastic CEO and boss that unfortunately I didn't get to drive with, but he was a gay man, actually, and he was super inclusive. And I do have to say that the Duck Tours has always been a fantastic company to work for, and always just welcoming of every person and every type of driver to come in.
That's great.
Erin, thank you very much for the call.
That was some really, really good insight.
We had an authentic Duck driver give us a sense of camaraderie among the Duck crew.
An insider's view.
An insider's view.
We have an anonymous texter who said, "Hi, Marjorie and Andrea. When my daughter and her family visited from Pennsylvania a few years back, they took the kids who were then 5 and 7. When I asked my 7-year-old grandson if he liked the duck boat tour, he said, 'Nana, they are amphibious vehicles.'"
Yeah. Okay. Well, Amy in Medford says, "Love you guys. Isn't the true Bostonian thing, though, to have seen the Ducks?
Yes.
But never to have been on one." That's you.
Very true.
That's you.
Very true.
That's you, Andrea. And somebody else just texted earlier. They said they thought it was a big tourist trap, but I don't know. I kind of like the Ducks. 877-301-8970. We're talking about the Celtics. We're talking about the Duck tours. We're talking about the Duck boats that just came by on Boylston Street. It's finally clearing out on Boylston Street, by the way.
Finally. And it's still pretty crowded.
And look at the confetti. And what is that? It's like, it looks like, is it confetti that's on
red
the
and
street?
green. Red and white, rather. I mean, green and white.
Green and white.
Confetti.
Okay, Amy in Newton, thank you for calling.
Hi, Amy.
Hi. Thank you for having me on air.
Thank you for calling.
I'm listening to you. I'm actually from Tennessee, but I was raised in South Florida. And I just heard you share that the Duck Tour started in Boston, but they actually originated in Wisconsin. And the only reason I know that is because when living in Miami, I would take the Duck Tours anytime I would have visitors come down to stay with me.
I'm shocked. I thought they were...
I guess it's the... It's the Wisconsin Dells? Amy, what's the Wisconsin Dells? What is the Dells?
I'm not real sure what the Dells is. All I can remember from the tours in Miami that they would try to say that it was kind of like their banter that, Miami is like for flashiness and original whatever. But the guide that I had several times said that it was Wisconsin Dells, and it was actually, I think a previous listener just shared that they were amphibious boats from World War II, I think.
Yeah, World War II. Yeah, they went onto the beaches in Normandy during D-Day.
They carried soldiers and equipment.
And you know what?
I'm
looking at this story that talks about the original Wisconsin Ducks, which started offering the nation's first duck tours way back after World War II in 1946. We started here in Boston in 1994, apparently. But you're right.
They were first.
Yeah, they were in 1946, and they talk about they weren't really called in World War II the duck boats. They were called the DUKW, was the manufacturer's code for the model. D stood for represented the model year, 1942. U was the utility body shape. K stood for all-wheel drive, and W for dual rear axles. I don't know why W would be for dual rear axles, but anyway, that was the deal. Amy, thank you very much for reminding us about the Wisconsin Dells. I, of course, am biased. I still think that the Duck Tours are most representative of Boston, but maybe because we're a smaller kind of place. And they actually brought the soldiers in. When you saw those, we just went through, the D-Day memorials, when we saw the 100-year-old and older veterans that actually were over there in Normandy for that.
Right.
And I didn't realize that those were duck boats that the people came in on.
Well, amphibious vehicles.
Yeah.
But built like tanks because they had to hold all of those soldiers, all of that equipment, all of that, all of the armaments. I mean, I'm assuming they had, in addition to the weapons that the soldiers were actually carrying, they must have had much, much larger weapons on those. But it always makes me think of, whether it's in a movie or in a newsreel or documentary, when showing the boats coming on to the beaches. and them sort of getting close but not really close enough, and the waves coming in and all of the soldiers disembarking. The fact that the original boats here were the actual original very heavy boats that were used for that is just amazing.
Yeah, we're having some fights among the texters about which city really initiated the duck boats, but it seems to be that Wisconsin is winning.
I think Wisconsin
And the
has
texter
it.
also reminded me, I should have pointed this out, that Doc Rivers used to be the coach of the Celtics, took his players on a duck boat ride before the Banner 17 season, too. So there's a tradition there that maybe Zoe Mazzulla latched onto of the coach taking the team on the ride around town. That's kind of a cool thing, I think.
That is nice.
And I love the fact that he and his wife, remember the Globe reported this, they get up every morning, they decide which coffee mug they're going to use that morning. They sit down at the table and they talk about things Celtics, and I guess they're quite religious. They talk about faith issues as well. He seems like a really grounded kind
Solid
of
guy.
And he's not screaming on the sidelines either. Have you noticed that?
No.
He doesn't scream at all.
Denise from Cambridge is saying to us that what she loved was how the players were not throwing beer or liquor during the parade from the duck boats. They were cheering with the crowd, and they were acknowledging the crowd, and they were yelling and screaming. But sometimes they'll be drinking one thing or the other. I'm just remembered in memory of Rob Gronkowski during one of the Patriots parades. But they weren't doing that. The Celtics weren't doing that, so she wanted to show her appreciation for that.
Here's Marion Mansfield. It says, we're almost out of time, so I'll read this quickly. The duck boat drivers are the kindest and funniest people. When my husband and I took our 5-year-old son with autism on a duck boat ride, he really wanted to drive it, so when the driver got in on the Charles, he allowed my son to hold on to the steering wheel all by himself.
That's wonderful.
It was the best day of ever for my son's life. Thank you very much, Marion Mansfield, for that. And thank you, Andrea, for filling in.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure, Marjorie. And thanks to all of you for listening to another edition of Boston Public Radio. We love having you here. Thank you. Keep up with us 24/7 by way of our podcast, or check out our TikTok page at Boston Public Radio. Tune in Monday for former Boston Globe editor Brian McGrory, a transportation panel with Chris Dempsey and Stacey Thompson, NYU medical ethicist Art Kaplan, Mass Teachers Association President Max Page, and student Gigi Green, who will talk about MCAS, and food policy analyst Corby Kummer. Our amazing crew is Zoe Matthews, Aidan Connolly, Nicole Garcia, Hannah Loss, with additional support from Ariana Gonzalez. Our engineer is John the Claw Parker. Our executive producer is Jamie Bologna. Thanks to our BPL staff, Brad Lewis, Maddie Geyer, Juan Jose Gazina, Sandra Lopez Burke, as well as our hosts here at the Newsfeed Cafe, who did yeoman's work today, and across the street at the Lennox Hotel. Stay tuned to the Culture Show's Week in Review, which starts right after the 2 o'clock news here on 89.7 GBH. I'm Andrea Cabral.
I'm Marjorie Egan. Thanks again for tuning in. Hope you can tune in on Monday, and hope you enjoy this beautiful day and the Celtics pride. Thanks, Andrea.
Thanks, Marjorie. Bye. Everybody.
What's interesting?
Our time together is over,